Welcome to another episode of the Paragon Path. This is episode 6, the Demeanor of the Healers. We have 3 fantastic guests with us today, and we're going to cover everything about Paragon Healer, from who you should be targeting with your enchantments and spells, interesting combos to make, as well as alternate playstyles that you may have not thought of. With that, enjoy the show.
Beautiful.
All right, so we are back for our 6th episode of Paragon Path. This is the Demeanor of the Healers. I like internal rhymes. You're going to have to deal with my weird titles. I've realized, and it was pointed out to me very recently, that I have not introduced who I am besides on one podcast. So I am Merrick the 15th. I'm running this stuff. This is also an explicit channel. We can totally swear and do whatever we want. So go crazy. We have today with us 3 fantastic guests. One of them is a return guest. You will see him on
half of them so far.
Yeah. Half so far. And we got one more lined up for him. We just need one of our wizards to have free time. And the other 2, Hopper will be the only not repeat unless she goes and gets another Paragon between here and the next time I have an episode. So we're going to start with Kaads introducing himself, and then we'll go Hopper and Haj, just so everyone can get to know everyone's voice and a little bit about each person, where they're from, a little bit of their history. So, Kaads?
Hi, I'm Marquis Cat Hearts Onaman, and I am a Paragon Healer. This is one of my Paragons that was actually earned in the current rule set. So, unlike Paladin and Druid.
Hopper?
Hi, this is Hopper. I guess I'm a lady. And I've been playing for about 4 years. I got my Paragon status like a year or 2 ago. Healer was basically like the only class that I played pretty much as soon as I started. So it was my one and only, my love. So yeah.
And then your I don't know how to do the apprentice above thing. It's very bad word wise, but your Paragon, I guess, Haj.
Yes, Hopper. Hello, I am Haj Alksan. I play Amtgard in this beautiful country, live in Polaris. And Hopper was my first Paragon apprentice. She got her stripes.
Honestly, I admit that I went to Haj for like a lot of my healer questions, and it was more like, how can I optimize this class? Because Haj knows the rulebook like the back of his hand.
This is very true.
Oh, I'm definitely more rusty than I am now during
We're all
quarantine.
rusty. It's COVID. If you're not rusty, I'd be concerned, and I'd have questions about where you're playing and can I join you. This is a joke for all legal reasons. So, starting off the bat, we have to always make sure that we get a rubric, what we consider a Paragon, what we want to make sure the difference between a 6 and a Paragon is. So, the way we start off every episode, what is the difference between a level 6 and a Paragon? We'll go reverse order, which we started. So, Haj, what do you consider the difference between a 6 and a Paragon?
Well, a level 6, I would say, you know your abilities, you know what you're out there doing, you have a game plan, a list set. The difference, I suppose, with that and a Paragon, I guess, is probably more just on performance. And when it comes to, like, quick actions and knowing what actions to take in which order. So, for example, like, you know, just packing a resurrect is a necessity, but who to resurrect at what time is more of a higher level thinking. Just as an example.
Mm-hmm. We'll move to Hopper.
I mean, I feel like most people kind of have an understanding for the difference between level 6 and a Paragon. Like, you can get level 6 without ever really playing a class. So you can be, I mean, like, a lot of people just, they want to be nice, sign in as you want, and, you're not going to police it, right? Even though, In some places they do. They're like, you have to play it. That's in the rulebook. But people just being nice, and they give them the credits. So I think that the main difference is you can be a level 6 and not know your spells. You can be a level 6 and not be a threat. You can be a level 6 and nobody will even know that you even play that class. Like if somebody is like, all right, Haj is on that other team. I think I know how he likes to play. I think I tried to listen to what spell list he's got, and I think he's gonna run Necro or something like that. So like we gotta do this. So kind of planning based off of I know this person, I pay attention enough to be like, this is what they like to play because I see them do it often enough to even like study it and know it like the back of their hand. So yeah.
Makes sense. And Kaads, the question we've asked you 3 times.
3 times so far.
Yep.
The difference between a level 6 and a Paragon, in my opinion, huge difference. And the analogy I made in the previous video was that it's kind of like in an MMORPG. It's the difference between a max level and someone who's really mastered their role. A great example is that in mini kingdom events, everyone's a level 6. There's a lot of kingdom events where everyone's allowed to play level 6, but even though that happens, you can tell who the Paragons are. They're the ones who are the biggest threat on the field, the ones who know their class inside and out, and have optimized their class, and have probably optimized what they can do for that specific game. And yeah, they're the big threats on the field.
All right, so we've got a rubric down, what we're kind of looking for. We're going to go, I think this is correct, we're going to go reverse newest to oldest Paragon, which I believe should be Hopper, Haj, Kaads. Because Kaads, you got healer very quickly in V8, correct?
Yeah, somewhat quickly. It was definitely a please stop playing this class kind of a thing, which is what Paragon should be.
Right.
Absolutely, I agree with
that. I didn't stop.
Yeah. Don't stop. Never stop. Always play. Play the classes that make you have fun. That's a good point. So starting with Hopper, what are the 3 things you wish you knew when you started playing healer or when you started on your Paragon path?
When I first started playing Amtgard in general, all I did was fight. I got to know the torches really well, and so classes were kind of a mystery to me. So when I started learning healer, I immediately jumped to the last page of the spells, and I was like, oh, look at all those high-level spells. And there are just a lot of low-level spells that can be really useful. So I would kind of build my spell lists off of expensive things and it didn't really end up working with either the game type that we were playing, like maybe I wouldn't even bother to be a priest or any type of a resbot in a life pool game, which can be game changing. And I always felt that I needed a subclass, and eventually I fell into it may not always be the best choice for the game, but I fell into a love for not using subclasses. So the things that I wish that I knew in the beginning were subclasses give you limitations, and sometimes, depending on how you want to play, they might not be worth it, and you don't have to take them if you don't want to.
Cool. I like that. That was something that came over from the Druid podcast as well, is that there are some builds that are best without a subclass.
That's definitely a good one.
Yeah, it's weird for me coming from Bard because there's almost no reason not to take a subclass of a type because Dervish is stupidly good. Like if you're not wearing 4 points or full 2 points of armor, you should probably be taking Dervish. But Haj, 3 things you wish you knew when you started playing healer. Or start on your Paragon
path. Well, I struggled a little bit with this question, and I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Hopper said, just because she and I have a very similar idea on one of these. Senpai
noticed me.
Basically that having an archetype is not always necessary. Sometimes it's very useful to not have those restrictions. Thinking specifically, I think Priest is probably the most popularly chosen archetype in Healer, but Priest its restrictions are very real. Sometimes people think like, oh, that restriction, that's not much at all. I can really work around that. But having a swift release is very good. Having access to swift on your ice balls, on your other touch range things.
On Circle of Protection?
I was about to say, yeah, swift Circle of Protection is so good. And that's something that you just can't take as a priest. But so yeah, that's one thing. Another thing that would have been very helpful to know in the beginning is how resurrecting affects the frequency, I guess you could say, of per lives, and how it affects armor points on somebody who has been resurrected. So to clarify, somebody who's resurrected does not get their per lives back. Somebody who is resurrected does not get any armor points restored that were gone in that location when they died. I didn't learn that until like probably halfway through my healer career when I was going for it. And that is a very game-changing thing when you realize it. I couldn't really think of a third thing very well, because I kept thinking really everything I was grateful to not know, because it allowed me to learn it in a very detailed way.
Interesting. Not knowing something and learning it. I mean, that's always fun to learn something new, at least for me. If you don't like learning, you're probably on the wrong podcast. Kaads, what are 3 things you wish you knew for healer?
So when I started healer, the spell list I put together at the beginning was very similar to the spell list I used when I became Paragon. And I can't really say that for a lot of other classes that I've played. But healer, I definitely kind of really looked into it, like theory crafted it with a bunch of friends, and we came up with what we felt was the best, for our means at least, the best combat healer build, like pure support healer build. One thing I will say is that Greater Release is just as much of an offensive spell as it is a defensive spell. Maybe a little bit more of an offensive spell, because you can use it to range release somebody while your team kills them. You can use it to remove fight after death. And that last one is the big one. I remember there was a castle battle in Keep where I removed like 7 fight after deaths and got them back with Steel Life Essence because I had them experienced.
Nice.
So the other thing that I learned is that when you're playing a pure support class and you're kind of staying in the second rank of your team, once you throw a spell ball, especially in a mass battle, you're likely not getting that spell ball back for probably a good 15 minutes. So that's one thing I learned, is that like small games take spell balls. Larger games, you can take spell balls, but definitely not as many. So that's at least 2 things that I learned.
Yeah.
The big ones.
It's an equipment problem when you throw your spell ball and you're like, I need it. Can you?
And it's way over there.
You have to like either wade your way through a line of people, which nobody wants to do anyways, and get it, or, just ignore it. And especially in a large battle game, there are probably battery bards on the field that are available to give you your per lives back, most of your verbals, so you're not having to worry about running out of those.
Like you?
Like me, yes.
Like you?
One other thing I learned, kind of the hard way, is that looking at the rule book, I'm like, okay, so healer is mostly a support class, but you know what? They're really good at releasing, healing, and rezzing, but they're not so good at mending. They kind of suck at mending. They get mend at a higher level than like druid or wizard, and they never learn greater mend. So okay, try to train people to go to their wizard or druid for mends, and not the healer. Yeah, that's not going to work. They're still going to go to you for mends because you're the support role. So no matter what, you're going to have to suck it up and take some meds.
It is really unfortunate because, like, is it wizard, druid, and bard get it at 1?
Yeah.
And you get it at 2? Yeah, healer gets
I think
3.
you get it 3.
Yeah.
I haven't played healer in a minute, so this is showing. But like, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
That's
they're awful. They get it per life at least.
Yeah, healers suck.
no, but for mending, but that is the thing. Like, everyone's mind is the healer is the ultimate support class, and you turn around and you go, I need mends, and you should really be looking for the blue or yellow sash that's playing support, because the healer's I can't flesh mend armor. This doesn't work.
Yeah,
can't do that. I realize we're gonna say some jargon, and I'm gonna explain some of that right now. If we say resbot, that is a resurrection bot. Their basic job in the game is to sit at a respawn location and make everyone come back to life before the respawn timer would normally allow them to. I've realized very recently that we say some jargon that we've created in the Midwest and in Texas, and nobody else knows what it means. So we're going to abbreviate some stuff. Gummy is greater undead minion. Ummy is undead minion. COP is circle of protection, not circle of paragons. What was the other one? We'll shorten a lot of the spells. If we say something that sounds weird, just find the spell that sounds like the shortened version of whatever we said, and it's probably the right answer.
Mm-hmm. G release for greater release.
Greater release.
P tears, Phoenix tears.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pro mag is protection from magic. Pro is protection from projectiles.
If we're abbreviating it, it's probably a long name.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Now that technical thing is out of the way, three things we just went over. We want to do common mistakes to avoid, and let's start with Haj on this one. What are some common mistakes that you see healers make that they should avoid?
So this kind of goes back to my thing I sort of wish I would have known in the first place. Healing and resurrecting people who have not used their per lives or who have no armor points left. It's an important consideration, depending on the size of the game. And it just comes down to priorities. You need to understand how the respawn mechanic works in that situation as well. You know, to know how to most effectively use your incants. This applies mostly to a resbot. Something else to mention is a resbot will usually be a priest, because it gives them access to recharge their abilities. So for that person, it's very important for them to understand the respawn mechanics and how respawning somebody with armor or who hasn't used their per lives works. I think that's a big pitfall that I had to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked what Kaads said about keeping track of your spell balls as well, because that's definitely a situation I've found myself in. Out of spell balls, but not dead. So how do I get my shit back?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could technically like line up as many spell balls as you can in a straight line and then teleport and pick them up along the way.
I suppose.
We don't have blink, and you don't have wow, I was spacing on the reload. You don't have that, so you got to figure something out. Yeah, might work. I think we need to train more people on how Resurrect does work, because there's a lot of times where we've created kind of that weird assembly line where we have a res bot and then a bard and then another bard, and your job is to res the person, go to the first bard, get your spells back, go to the next bard, get your mends back, like your armor back, and then continue on your way. And most people just like get res and leave, and we're like, no, okay.
Yeah, I think it's sort of just something that a lot of people don't know or don't think about, but it is a mechanic of our game. And also for newer players, for people who aren't like trying to study really hard into the rules, they're just showing up to have a good time, you know, which of course we are all trying to show up and have a good time.
Yep.
But they, you know, as you said, they may be unaware of how that works. And so I think teaching that in our culture would be an important thing. And us as healers, it's, sort of our area of expertise to be teaching that.
Mm-hmm. Kaads, common mistakes.
I would say using the wrong build for the wrong situation. Unlike a lot of other classes, I would actually say of all the caster classes, healer is the one that you want to modify the most depending on the size of the game. And I'll say that, like, when it comes to, if I were to make a tier list for Amp Guard, for smaller games, I would put healer around in the B tier, just because they're a support class, and if there's not a lot of people to support, then you don't want to play a pure support healer. You kind of want to play a mix of offensive and defensive, and pretty much every other caster does offense better than healer. But when it comes to mass battles, if there's a tier list, healers are in the top tier, and they're the only ones who are in the top tier. They have a god tier all of their own. I have seen healers, good healers, just wreck mass battles, and especially if they take kind of a pure support build, and especially if they go with the flank of their team, because now you have this flank of like 12 elite people who just never die because their healer's amazing. So that's what I would say. The big mistake is if you find a good like pure build that you like for one, don't, like, if you say play a pure support build in a mass battle and you kick ass, because you will, because you're playing healer in a mass battle, don't take that build to a small battle and expect you to wreck as much face, because you probably won't. You do need to modify your list depending on the size and scope of the battle.
There's no jack of all trades list that you can be like, this is the one list I will run forever, and that is it. And that doesn't work.
No, that works for Druid, and probably works for Bard and Wizard.
You can't run Battery Bard on a small field unless you want to be really bored.
That is very true. I'm more thinking of like the Combat Bard, the combat bard with armor.
Yeah, Combat Bard. It gets messy, because then we have way too many copies of a spell for the number of people on the field, and it becomes a problem. Hopper, common mistakes you think people should avoid?
So my common mistake idea is, I guess, a little more geared towards my experience than what I've seen, is that, like I said before, I grew up in my little wee baby Amp Guard career with the torches, which means that I want to hit the people with the sticks. And so I'll get tunnel vision, like, real bad, and I'll get super excited because I'm like, I'm gonna whack this guy. Except I'm playing a healer, and I'm very squishy, and I should really try and play more as a team instead of being like, I'm gonna fucking get this guy. So I would say that value your life a little bit more. You are a healer, and you have a very good place on the team. So if you want to be team oriented, then sort of come at it a little bit more as part of a team, instead of, this is what I like to do, therefore I will do it, period, regardless of whatever class I'm playing, because I did that a lot. I still do that, not gonna lie, because I like to hit people.
I mean, you could get medium shields. That's moderately defensive.
Oh, medium shield, yes.
For those that don't know, Hopper is a very small woman, and I'm pretty sure if we gave you a max small, it'd be moderately okay.
If somebody gave me a max small, it would look the same as an average sized man using a max medium, because I currently use a max medium. It's very big. People are like, you're like a circle with legs.
Can't get no shoulder shots on that one.
I'm also 5'1", so they're just like, whoop, and then they hit me in the ankles.
I just jump.
Oh, memories. Why is she called Hopper?
Maybe. For those of you who don't know, the Torches are a Texas. If you don't know who the Torches are, we have some history to teach you. That'll be a different podcast. The Torches are a fighting company from Texas that have the highest concentration of warlords in any fighting company. It's ridiculous, but they really really like stick tag a lot, and some of them really like battle games. Like Delos was a master assassin who's one of the torches. He was a master assassin before getting his warlord, I believe. So
Dizzy also loves battle games, and I mean Noah's not a torch, but Noah's
he's
a
torch
torch.
adjacent. He's like Michael. Torch adjacent. All right, enough about torches. We'll get to them at a different podcast when I go through Fighting Company history. God, it's a long podcast. Healer fitting on the battlefield. So I want to point out something here that a lot of people really classically think healer is a support class only, and all three of you have proven that wrong by playing offensive builds in large and small battle games with a healer and still wrecking face. So where does the healer fit on the battlefield? This is going to go very similar to the druid one if you didn't see that, or if you saw that one. Where does the healer fit on the battlefield? Roles, positioning, meta. How do we change our style of play based on the size of field? So we're going to start with Kaads on this one.
I would say the healer, as I've said, its biggest strength is in its support. When I play healer, I do take offensive abilities, and I do, and I can wreck people with those offensive abilities. But I take the mindset of like, this is what I'm going to be used to defend myself, so I'm not just a speed bump if people try to rush my team. I'm spending most of my time supporting my team and throwing the occasional ice ball and maybe casting the occasional verbal. I usually take Necro Priest though, which doesn't have it that much in the way of verbals. But Spellballs are awesome, and when it comes to offense, Ice Ball is one of the best spells in the game, and it's great because many classes can use it. But yeah, that's pretty much what I think healer. If you're playing healer optimally, and I'm not saying that you have to, because sometimes playing a class unoptimally is fun, but if you're playing healer optimally, it's going to be support. But I will say that when I say support, I don't mean like 100% a res bot, like a base res bot. That's what a lot of people think when they think support, and that's just simply not true. In my opinion, the best way to play healer is you're constantly with your team. You're mobile with your team. You're rushing with your team, and you're keeping your team up. On a mass spell that could mean like an elite group of 10 people that's just flanking, and they have a healer with them that's playing full support. But that full support healer isn't just in one place. They're constantly moving. They're constantly resing. They're constantly releasing. They're constantly doing all that stuff. That's in my opinion, that's a healer's optimal role on the battlefield.
An aggressive support.
Yes.
So like
that's a great way of putting it.
If we break down to the front line is almost always armor. The second line is like pulls, bows, and throwies. That healer can be on that second line. You've got a medium shield if you want to use it, and you can keep everyone in the front line up and running because you've got res, you've got heal, you've got mends that come at an extra cost, but you've got the potential to use it.
Exactly. And speaking of men's, here's a pro tip. When I'm playing second rank healer, I like to take either like Stone Skin or Iron Skin, get that just so like stray spell balls don't hit you and stuff like that. And I usually take Steel Life Essence twice per life, and usually take Necromancer so I can recharge it. And then I take Experience Mend, and that kind of gives you like a poor man's Scavenge. Because you can steal Life Essence back the Mend and then cast the Mend. And you can use that to keep yourself up indefinitely if they're really focusing on you with arrows and stuff like that.
Yeah, getting magical armor, especially ancestral magical armor, is a huge benefit for all casters and support because it's free lives essentially when it comes down to it. You're avoiding getting either ice balled, which could lead to a death. You're avoid getting that stray arrow that could be a death, or a wound that you now have to take the time out of your build to heal on yourself instead of being able to heal someone else, because that's not your optimal is to keep everyone else running so they don't have to take time out of their fight to heal up or go back or whatever. Fitting on the battlefield. So second line and flanks, and there's a point in there that I will tag for a little bit later. Sustainability on flanks is really important. That if you're not sustainable on a flank, you're probably not supposed to be there. Like, barbarians think that they should be on flanks a lot of times, and I disagree, because they can't keep themselves up and running as often as a warrior with low points of armor, a healer with an enchantment, or even an assassin or a scout, because they have some abilities to get themselves out of dodge if they need to and keep going. I mean, the barbarians needs to be fixed, in my opinion, as well, but that's a different conversation.
That reminds me of a healer on the flank. There's a certain strategy I have called the dropship, which I kind of nag from StarCraft, and this is something my friends and I do. Like and it's especially good in battle games that have like different terrain. Like you can't cross this area, you can't cross that area. Like there's this island, and it's something me and my friends get to do. It's like get help, and Thor like, let's do dropship. Let's come on, let's do dropship. And like, no, we're not. Okay, fine, we'll do dropship. And that's when you take a necromancer healer, you have them take 5 undead minions, make them like ridiculous undead minions like monks and like warlords playing monk, and then you teleport or past bad terrain to a part of the field that's unoccupied. The healer does, and your team hits the undead minions, making them go insubstantial.
And they chase through.
And they have to, and they go right through and go to where the healer is, and suddenly you have a dropship with the healer and 5 undead minions, like right behind the enemy team, usually with pole arms.
Does anybody else think that healer on the flank should be either a band name or a book name?
I like it as a band name. It should be a cover for Nine Inch Nails.
Healer on the flank.
So there you go, dropship. Do it sometime. It's really fun.
Would it also potentially work, because Haj, you've done this before, I've seen you do it, and you've done it to me, where you start with a greater undead minion, and you kill the person you're targeting, steal life to charge the next greater undead minion, and cast it on them? Okay.
Do that.
Do they come alive?
That's one of my favorite things to do.
Do they come alive as soon as the greater undead minion is cast, or you still have to do the...
Yes.
They do come alive right away?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
They do.
If they didn't come alive, then you could just do that down the line and teleport over, and then they'd all have to chase you anyways. It's basically the same thing, but I like that. Just, hey, pop, 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 and go through. Also, I will point out, if you really want to make a team mad, you need a druid, a healer, and a wizard, and you give your undead minions attuned and contagion, and then they are stupid.
So that's actually the first combo that I ever noticed in the rulebook interaction, and I would like to say I've never done it.
We have planned it, but never done it.
It does seem really wicked. Needs a lot of coordination, probably on a bigger team size, but never done it. Seems amazing, though.
I mean, can you imagine like 3 or 5 just even moderately good stick jocks with wounds kill and essentially infinite lives?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And if you make them
and
monks,
pole arms.
Yeah, and pole arms. Yes. Plus, you've got teleport. You can throw them wherever you want, and they just boop. Oh, no, that doesn't work because they come out of insubstantial the wrong way.
It's so interesting to see the different types of combos that come out of different regions, right? So I've noticed that Polaris is less of a stick-heavy area. Like, I feel like you guys more so enjoy battle games than the South, and then down here there's like a lot of stick-heavy people who will end up, they'll be like, I really like to ditch, but like I'm gonna get some more fights by jumping into this battle game, but I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm basically just gonna hit people. So what ends up happening is that you build these different combos based off of the players that you're used to seeing in your own region. So like me, for instance, one of the first combos that no wait, I'm gonna save that because that's another question.
Okay.
I'm gonna save that.
Okay. Planning ahead.
Oops.
Haj, where do you put the healer on the battlefield? Roles, positioning, stuff like that.
So, as Kaads had mentioned earlier, it depends a lot on the size of the team. And that's very important for building your list, as he was saying in the last topic. So I always take that into consideration when looking at what my list is going to be and where I'm going to be on the field. Those things go totally hand in hand. For example, if you are on a small team, your offensive capabilities matter that much more. If you're on a 5-man team, you are now 1/5 of your team's stick. So let's say if you've got the best stick at the park on your team, you can probably play a little bit more support. If you, let's say the best stick in the park is on the other side, you should probably be a little bit more combat focused. But with what Hopper said too, your priority is to stay alive because you're the healer, you are the support.
Value your life. You matter.
That's something that I also had to kind of learn. It's just like, if I would have just taken a couple of steps back rather than engaging here, I would probably be alive. My teammates would probably then also be alive, even if they had died, because I could resurrect them.
Right.
So it really matters on team size. When it's, a smaller team, take those offensive spells and abilities and, try to pack some stick, sword and board, Florentine if you feel like it. I know, imagine. And then in a bigger game, take more support class. Because your team is going to be able to fill in those gaps where you are lacking for you much more easily.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense on keeping that. We do have to point out, I would like to state, remember you have to have an open-handed cast if you're playing Flow. Gotta flirt with that boundary line of like, in my hands, I wielded, carried, that whole little thing. Haj, you have an answer to it. You have a wrist strap on your sword that you just like drop, and then the sword is hanging and you pop it back up, and it looks really cool. It's also just like a dangling weapon then while you're casting, which is potentially problematic. Hopper, where the healer chewing on my tongue. Where the healer
fits on the field?
Yes, that one. Thank you.
So I think that, I mostly agree with pretty much everything that the other two have said. And I think that where the healer fits on the field is wherever you can keep everybody else in the game as much as possible, right? So if you're playing, if you're rezzing people most of the time, maybe that's the thing that you're best at. You're right behind them, as close as you can get, keeping yourself safe, and popping them back up where you feel like you can, like in that area that Kaads was talking about, like that second rank, or maybe even right behind that. Or maybe you're on that flank, maybe you're the healer on the flank, and you're making sure that flank can continue doing what they're doing, right? So you're wherever you fit on the field is where you can keep people in the game continuously doing what they need to do, whether either mending or rezzing or what have you.
Keeping them right there. I think a couple times we referred to that as a pocket healer. They sit in that little pocket of space behind the boardman who's got, the stick in the pole. Yes. I will state, if you've not worked with somebody, when you're doing pocket healer, you're probably going to step on each other's toes and it's going to get really bad. Work on moving together in a pocket healer situation or a pocket caster situation, because it's hard.
Make sure your teammates know when you die, don't fucking move.
Yeah, don't move. That's another point.
Don't just put your sword up and then run away. It's like, I'm here for a reason.
Yeah. Training.
Something else I just thought of too on this topic that is sort of overlooked, I guess, or not thought of maybe a lot of times, but a healer on the battlefield can really be like a battlefield commander sometimes. I know that's how I played it a lot. Yeah, when
we got a flank coming over there.
Exactly, and especially when you are in the back, more like rezzing, it's really easy for you to take those observations and then share that information with your team, either as they're coming back to spawn for whatever reason. Just share that information, point out to people where we need their help.
I love it.
Yeah, being in the back, not being on that front line, you get a much bigger view of the battlefield. And I think it's important with anybody who's not on that front line. you have to take into effect that you have more effect on the field than just your abilities. Stating where things are coming from, either grabbing a handful of people and moving them where you think they should go, is going to make a bigger difference than you ever could if you just started shoving people around left and right, because shove is an ability in the game. It has very strict limitations. Battlefield strategy is limitless because it's not defined or confined by anything in our game besides your imagination and what you can figure out. So be smart. Any class can use that. Be smart. Go to abilities, things you need to know, and hidden gem abilities. Now, we've pointed out offensive abilities several times. What are those offensive abilities? And Haj, you've, I think, used these quite a bit. What would you consider the offensive abilities on the Haj or the Haj list, the healer list?
So I don't know that I'll get all of them. This might not be an exhaustive list, but for me, the ones that come to mind, of course, you have Stun, your max level spell. You have Ice Ball. I believe that is the strongest spell in the game. I think I take that sentiment from Kaads, as I heard him say that once, and I agreed with that from then on.
Engulfing's so good.
Yeah, and they have like a 30-second death spawn, it's oftentimes an engulfing death ball. I'll take it. Okay. And then Astral Intervention.
Yes.
Oh, it's so underrated. I'm going to cover that for my hidden gem. And Shove, of course, is offensive. Greater Release. That might have been an exhaustive list, but those are the ones that come to mind.
I think that's most of. I mean, besides the one you didn't hit on is the catch and release. The way that we can turn a release spell into an offensive kill.
Oh, true. And I also didn't hit Entangle either.
Oh, right. Well, when you have Ice Ball, why do you need Entangle?
That's how I feel.
You use Entangle on the people that you don't want to Ice Ball.
Who wouldn't you want to Ice Ball?
Well, I mean, you could shove them after you entangle them. That would be a benefit. Because you can't shove a frozen player, but you can shove.
Yeah.
They're immune to that ball.
I'll say there's one person who you don't want to Ice Ball, and that's warriors with ancestral armor, or anyone with ancestral armor that matter, because it'll just hit them and do 1 point. But you know what won't? Abeyance. Abeyance goes right through ancestral armor.
Oh, that spicy green ball that only you guys have. Oh my god.
Have some wasabi ball.
That is my new favorite name.
You just reminded me of one of my bluff casting tactics with that as well.
Oh yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, the Dirty Harry thing.
Oh.
You charge a spell ball behind your shield and you walk up to the warrior. And is it ice ball? Because if it hits their shield, they're ice balled. If the abeyance hits their shield, it does nothing. But if the ice ball hits their, so do you want to block it with your armor? Do you want to block it with your shield? You have to make that choice as soon as the ball leaves my hand. Which did I charge? Well, in all the confusion, kind of forgot myself.
Shields can be really big targets, especially being a person who really does love sword and board. It can be a pretty bad thing to have depending on if people are carrying those engulfing balls.
Mm-hmm.
Balls.
One thing, one spell say is a sleeper underrated as an offensive spell, and this isn't just exclusive to healers. It's teleport, especially if you self-teleport, because if you self-teleport, and like I said, this applies to healers, this applies to wizards, this applies to druids. And you can come out anytime between where you hit, where you entered insubstantial and where you're leaving insubstantial with the exit incantation if you cast it on yourself. And the exit incantation can be said while moving. So you can teleport yourself and then run at somebody while incanting the exit incantation. And then you'll pop right out and kill them.
I have a very clear memory of you, like, you were awkwardly stepping through our line. It was a tunnel fight. This was at MAME a couple years ago, MAME or GAC, and you are teleporting through, slowly incanting I return to the physical world, I return to the physical world, and you'd get like halfway through and somebody would track you or banish you back, and you'd like start going back, you'd pop back out. You just kept doing that. And there was like 4 people dealing with a Kaads who had no weapons and was just teleporting. And I was like, this is the biggest waste of our time ever.
You can stutter the exit incantation. I return to the physical world, I return to the physical, and then they stop paying attention to you. Oh, he's just faking. And then you actually come out. And you have and if you have weapons.
That with assassin, like there's this guy at my park named Balisk. I mean, he doesn't come out anymore. He moved away, but he would often play assassin, and then I would be like, the spirit spit.
The bluff casting.
One of my favorite things that I discovered pretty late in my healer career, and I carried it on to wizard, was that teleport shenanigans. I think I got the name Telefragger from Kaads, and
yes.
So, but it's incredibly frustrating to the people that I have played it with, or like who are on the other team, because all you're doing is you're just, like Kaads said, you walk into the back line, and you're kind of bluffing your incant. You can come out whenever you want. If you get dealt with, you start again. Just make them keep dealing with you. And then when they underestimate you, you pop out and you can just knife them.
Look at me. I'm a distraction. A
Exactly.
dangerous distraction.
I like with ice balls.
Well, let me say this. I play wizard, druid, and healer a lot, and all of them have teleport, and I buy teleport.
It's so good. It's such a good spell. And I think it's made more deadly by the fact that the casters then have other answers after they pop out. Like the assassin still has their bow and their sword, but they don't have much else past that, where the druid, the wizard, and the healer pop out, and now they are a full-blown arsenal behind you waiting to cast whatever they want and taking full advantage of you not paying attention. Teleport is underrated.
Mm-hmm. And an advanced tactic with those spells that I listed as well, if you are able to ambulant your Banish, you can, while you are insubstantial, you can ambulant Banish yourself to basically reverse the direction of your teleport. And through this, you can still.
Expensive.
Oh, for healer? Not for healers. You could banish at level 1.
Ambulant.
Oh, yeah. Ambulant is a tough take at level 5.
Yeah.
And it's oftentimes less useful, but in this situation, I like it a lot. You can ambulant banish yourself and then basically just reverse your direction if you've gone too far and you want to still distract, and then you can still use the return incant to pop out whenever you want.
Yeah, because you're the target of your own teleport, and you were the cause of your own teleport, and you entered it voluntarily.
Gosh, that's so smart.
And one more thing, Banish it's spirit, so it's compatible with priest. You can use ambulant with it while you're
exactly, and you can get the recharge on it. It's so good.
I'm remembering why I hated being on the other side of the field from Haj. It's been a while, and I've been able to pick and choose my teams well enough that I'm like, I'm on Haj's team. I don't care what the rules are.
That's
you put me on the other team? No, you didn't.
That's an answer to the first question, by the way. What's the difference between level 6 and a Paragon? Well, a Paragon is someone you pick on your team because you want to play that day.
We've kind of moved from the go-to abilities and hidden gems into the countercasting and like bluffing spells. So I want to define the bluffing spells because apparently people don't know this ability that every caster has.
Real quick.
Yeah.
My hidden gem is definitely Astral Intervention. That spell is so good. It has charge 3. You can charge it while you're insubstantial. You can keep yourself protected and insubstantial. You can banish yourself out of it. And you can use it offensively. Astral Intervention is extremely flexible.
I love that offensive combo. Like, I specifically remember doing that too. What's his name? Salty? No.
Yes.
Aggro.
Everybody, yeah.
He was a warrior in like, I don't know how many points, but he was wearing a lot of armor. And I was in Polaris for that event, and he's like, the respawn was so far away, and I was like, Astral Intervention, Banish, see you in 5 minutes. So good.
It works. It's one of those like awe insult combos. Astral Intervention Banish is another one of those combos. If you have the time to pull them off, they are devastating because it's essentially go play by yourself for however long it takes you to walk back. And
yeah,
it's mean and beautiful all at the same time. Do we have any other hidden gems before I explain counter the weird bluff casting that you can do?
Nah.
No? All right.
Go ahead.
So bluffing a spell is the process of taking the incant and stopping purposefully before it finishes, because the spell is not used until you finish that incant. Now, there is a stipulation. You are not allowed to make up fake spells. You have to use spells that you, A, have a copy of, and B, you are using the right incantation. So you can't make up the I waggle my finger at you spell. That's not okay. That's purposeful confusion. Using the spell but not finishing it is totally viable, and it doesn't take up the use of the spell unless you use metamagic with it. Then it uses the metamagic but not the spell. So doesn't it do that, or am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right.
Okay, so you bluff the spell essentially. You have it,
yeah,
but you don't finish it. It's like half cocking a trigger. You're like, I can shoot it, but I don't have to. The reason I put it on this one and not any of the other casters is Hodge, Kaads, and Hopper have all done this a lot, and I wanted them to give some tips and tricks on how to, or like different things that you can, different spells that they like doing it with. So what are some of your guys' favorite bluff casting spells? We'll start with Hodge.
No, I'll start with somebody else. I feel like I talked a lot on the last one.
Okay, Hopper.
Stun.
Stun?
It's done. Well, one, it's very expensive, right? You can't take a shitload like some other classes can take a shitload of like other spells that are pretty good. But I think you can only take like a handful just because
Four.
just because of how expensive it is. And you know, you don't want to waste them, but people are afraid of stuns. You know, they're pretty powerful. So what you can do is you can kind of crowd control just by bluffing a stun. Like, let's say that you're kind of in that, not like the A line, but the B line, and somebody's almost getting through, or they're coming around a flank. Maybe you can bluff a stun at them, and instead of them charging through, I mean, they may very well just charge you. That sucks. But they might be like, oh shit, that's a stun, and they'll be like, oh man, I don't want to do this flank no more. So, I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind with offensively bluffing something like that. And so yeah.
Kaads?
Pretty much any offensive verbal will do. It's not a spell, but it's an incantation. But we've already touched on stuttering your exit incant for insubstantial. Another thing you can do, and you have to kind of be careful with this because you know it's a fine line between like actually bluffing a spell and actually using poor sportsmanship. But if you bluff your teleport, so if you're saying, you know, I travel through the ether, a lot of times when someone's like messing up your line, they'll see that you're teleporting and they'll leave you alone because they've kind of considered you gone at that point.
I'm not going to make it over there in time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Where you don't want to, like, I think it would be cheating if I said, like, I travel through the ether, I travel through the ether, because I only said it 3 times. Mm-hmm. But if I'm like, I travel through the ether, okay, he's not paying attention to me anymore. And then you run up and shank them. It's their own fault for not paying attention to you. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Well, pretty much any offensive spell, instead of getting it off, if somebody overreacts to your offensive spells and they run away, that's kind of a crowd control all in of itself. If every time you cast something, they run 20 feet away, you can not only take them out of combat for, you know, about 5 to 10 seconds, you can wear them down. You can make them really tired.
That's what I call yo-yoing. I do it to barbarians with shove. They charge at you, you shove them, they're 20 feet back. They start charging again. You start the charging can as soon as you finish the last one. So when they get close, you just keep doing it, and they keep running Herbies back and forth. You can do the same thing with bluff casting. You're just making people, they're like, I'm going to get, I don't want to edit.
Now, another thing you can do with bluff casting, because this works absolutely well with shove, is that once they start running away from you, then it's hard for them to turn around and come back to you. So start an incant at them. They take the bluff. They start running from you. Then Ambulant casts something while chasing them.
Ooh.
Because that works with shove. If you shove them and then combo it with an Ambulant spell while chasing them, like it's the same theory, but it could work on a bluff spell too.
Right.
I mean, there have been some occasions where I have accidentally bluffed a spell I didn't mean to, because I'll be like, I'm gonna cast a spell, so it'll end up coming out like I'll say half the spell, and I'll be like, cast it, you. Just so that may not be considered bluffing a spell, and maybe just fumbling up until the point to where it's like, yeah, you didn't get anything off, good try, but like I was scared for like half a second.
Right. Let's say it's that fine line between purposely causing confusion and using the loaded spell. It's kind of the same thing as having an arrow in the
Like, it happens.
Here's a good bluff I've used every once in a while. I was on the field and I saw two casters looking at me and talking amongst each other, making a plan for me.
Ooh, they
and
talk
then
about you.
and then like Leon was called, and I see them both walk up to me steadily. I stop and I teleport, and then I start moving to them purposefully, and then they both rush me and start casting spells at me. Well, I'm teleporting. I'm insubstantial. And I start saying, I return to the physical world, and I just see both of their eyes just go huge.
That is a great read on your opponents there.
Just allowing them to, they're like, I'm going to charge it. Oh, he's in.
Damn it.
It makes it's frustrating. It is very entertaining when you do have control. And I think that is what angers a lot of people about very annoying assassins, is they have the ability to charge at you while insubstantial, and it means nothing at all. Like, they're insubstantial. They can't actually hit you, but they can look scary and ghosty and just like, and just charge at them and see how that goes. It's the same thing if you're casting your own teleports. You choose, the train tracks 4 miles away is your teleportation location. You can come out at any point between here and there and just do what you want.
It's a common misconception, and I'm not sure why, because it's not mentioned at all in the rulebook, but people think your teleport destination has to be somewhere that you can see. It does not. I generally choose
7-7.
Yeah. I generally choose the other side of the earth as my teleport destination, because I can pop out at any time that I wish. And if I, for whatever reason, can't, then I die. Whatever.
I mean, it's not wrong.
Another common misconception that people have tried to quote unquote catch me with is that, like, suppose I charge a spell ball, 5 minutes ago, and then I throw it at someone. I didn't hear you cast that. Well, you kind of don't have to.
Right.
I mean,
I've been holding this charged spell ball for the past couple minutes.
Yeah, as long as you didn't cast anything in between those time periods, you're fine. It didn't leave your hand. It didn't leave either of your hands, quote unquote, because you can still transfer it back and forth between your hands as long as it doesn't become active thrown. There's a bunch of weird gray areas in there, but I know when I was playing healer for a little bit, I would pinch the spell ball between my fingers on my sword hand, and just when someone would come at me, just toss the spell ball, because it's still a throw. It's still active. It's leaving my fingers, but I'm still able to stick fight with the spell ball in the hand.
Yes.
Works. Counter casting. So you guys do not have anything to stop someone from casting besides offensive abilities that are either shove or astral intervention or something like that. Do you find you can still get off kind of almost like a break con with shove and astral intervention, or is it more times it's easier just to do something else?
I'd like to speak on bluff casting quick.
Yeah.
So for me, the bluff casting, some of the more potent ones to do that with are stun, as Hopper had listed, and I also really like doing the teleport return enchant thing. This is how I work with stun though, and how I think of it. I usually only take 2 at most. There's my secret, everyone. The first one, you use it, and you try to use it and make sure people know what it does. The second one is for when you bluff it, so they remember what it does. And basically, as Kaads was saying, if the person just backs out of range, you effectively cast shove without spending any points on shove or without using any abilities. So, by the power of White Light I stun thee, they backed up 15 feet. Great, I will bluff cast shove on, or bluff cast stun on the next person, and so on. And then a good way I've discovered to deal with ancestral armor is to build what I would call like a round fake with your spell balls. If you're not able to use the verbals to take care of them, which is generally your go-to with that, actually. But I know several times you throw ice balls at the ancestral armor person for 2 or 3 times. It might hit their shield, they might catch on and start armor blocking it. But the next time, you go up to them with a charged abeyance behind your shield, and you throw that at them, and they're going to move their shield because you just threw 3 ice balls at them. So they're going to move their shield, and they just got abeyance, and they opened up for it. It's a great feeling.
It's a great concept that you can use in so many aspects of Amtgard too, like especially the fighting part. It's like, Jamie does it a lot. Sword side hip, sword side hip, sword side hip. Oh, you're expecting that sword side hip because I killed you with it for the past 5 times I saw you? Fake shoulder. So if you hurt somebody enough, well, not really hurt, but if you kill somebody enough with a specific thing, then you can really make them flinch by making them think you're going to use it another time.
People are creatures of habit. You get used to one thing and you assume that is the pattern. And when that pattern breaks, it often sets us off and we get confused, which is a thing you can use to your advantage. Similar to that, you can use the same kind of sequencing with shove and alternate it with an astral intervention. So like you shove someone a couple times, they get used to that. Their response normally will be to just charge you, because if they can get that off, if they can still like swing at you while moving backwards, that's an option. But that 3rd or 4th time you pop an AI, which is an astral intervention, you pop that AI, they can't swing at you. It doesn't do anything. They just, and it's I've seen Hodge pull it off a couple times, and it's just stupid to watch people like realize they're like, my shot was in motion. You're insubstantial. I don't care, and just keep walking.
I don't care. You say what you want.
Your sword is ghostly. I don't care. Do we have any more on, because we mixed these two up, go-to abilities, hidden gems, countercasting, bluffing spells? Do we have any concepts we want to talk on that?
I kind of just jumped in there on countercasting so good. I could get my points on the bluff casting. But yeah, I have a few things for countercasting, definitely.
Okay, so what are your countercasting tactics or spells, things you use?
Yeah, so I have a player at my local park who, when he plays wizard, he usually plays warlock. So a couple of times when he's played warlock, I'm like, I should definitely just bust out my warder build, because if a warder gives pro death, which is a level 3 healer per refresh enchantment, a warlock cannot kill somebody or do anything to a player who has pro death. They can still affect their equipment through flame spells, but I suppose Warlock doesn't prevent you from taking spell balls, so you could get balled, but your verbals, pro death completely shuts down a Warlock.
Isn't that why Warlock got phased out very quickly? We realized if you just drop like a pro mag or a pro death, they get very useless very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, Warlocks are it's nice, but it definitely has its drawbacks. And as you said, pro magic is very effective. As far as countering somebody who's casting, I find an ice ball works the best because it's a short to mid range thing, somewhere that you would be using it in casting, and you can have that charged by the time they begin their 3 to 5 line incant. So, just if you got clear line to them, toss it. You got an engulfing freeze there.
Just drop them in a
You're
state.
casting at me. No. No.
I would like to take a moment to point out Spellball construction. I believe, Haj, you're using loose rubber bands. Kaads and Hopper, what are you guys using?
I use practice baseballs
Okay.
that are wrapped in 4-way stretch elastic.
Okay.
Scrap fabric wrapped in more fabric.
All right. The cheap one.
One thing I really like about my spell balls, and I use the same spell balls when I play Evoker Wizard, they work really, really well, is consistency. Consistency is huge in regards to spell balls. Because if every one of your spell balls, weighs the same and has the same distance on them, then you're going to get a lot more used to throwing them and get a lot more used to your range, and you'll improve your range. I might point out
that y'all probably want to listen to Haj and Kaads a little bit more on the spell ball point, because I throw a ball at you right in front of me, and it ends up over there. So my throwing ability clearly has not been practiced.
I mean,
long-ranging spell balls can be very difficult. I've found that going for mid-range at most is probably more effective to increase your accuracy and your ability to retrieve your equipment.
That makes a lot of sense. And I know you've done, and in Kaads, I'm guessing your balls also do this. You purposely throw it at a shield pretty hard so it bounces back and you can grab it.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's smart.
I will definitely touch
the balls, like the pre-made balls, like they'll bounce, so that's smart.
I will definitely touch on this more in the wizard video, because throwing is a lot more of a major skill for wizard than it is for healer, even though it is really useful for healer or any of the casters for that matter. But if you I've seen some people who did pitching while they're in college or while they're in high school, and they just wreck face playing a spellball caster. And that's something that you might want to give a shot. Like, usually there's some sort of pitching gym or some sort of baseball themed gym, or around the area. Go there and learn how to throw. One thing I will say is that you don't want to go too far. Well, you do want to go that far into long range throwing, but you don't want to do that motion for short range throws, because the sleight of hand throw is not to be underestimated.
That kind of underhand, quick toss, it's almost a weird wrap throw.
Yeah. Well, the throw where you kind of hide your charged spell ball behind your hand, like you cup it,
mm-hmm.
And then
yeah.
Surprise spell ball. Like I said, it's not to be underestimated.
Yeah, the sneakiness of a spell ball could be really ridiculous, because as long as it's in your hand and has been cast, and nothing else has been cast by you between that time and the time you throw it, it's active. It's ready to go. No one has to hear you cast it if they're not within 20 feet. So,
absolutely.
It's
for spell balls, I believe it's 50 feet.
Is it 50 feet?
Sorry.
50 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to cast them rather loudly, but once you have them cast, you can hide them behind your shield. You can hide them behind your hand. You can kind of stand off to the side and hide them behind your body. And when someone charges you, guess what? You have a spell ball in your hand. If they get hit with it, they're frozen for 60 seconds.
Yeah. Sorry, I was reading one of our questions, which I don't know the answer to. So one of our audience members said, if I'm not mistaken, Banish still requires you to return to base even if you exit in sub early. I don't know that answer.
I've got that one, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So, if an effect which causes one or more effects would end, all effects that are basically put on by that effect end as well. So, to translate that with an example, if I am, let's keep with Banish, I suppose, because I can't think of another one off the top of my head. If you banish somebody, and that Banish has two effects. One effect is that player becomes insubstantial. The other effect is that player must return to base. Now, if Banish, the single effect which caused both of those, is removed, both of those effects are then removed.
Yeah. Another point to make there is I believe that the clarification was what the questioner said for a while, and then the people who made that clarification realized how complicated that made things. Because, like, suppose you got awed. Well, what are the effects of awe? You can't attack your attacker. You can't attack the person who awed you. You have to stay away from them. So what happens if that gets released? Which part of awe are you releasing? It just gets confusing. And the easiest way to think of it is that, like, each spell only provides one effect. You release it, you release that one effect.
So are you then releasing the Banish instead of coming out of it as normal?
I would say you're releasing the entire Banish.
Right, so you're casting release to get rid of Banish, not not coming out of the insub state as regular, which would be I return to the physical world.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, okay. It is in release, it says the effects imposed by magic or ability with multiple effects, all other states and ongoing effects from the same source are also ended. It's one big pull off, but it's only for the single abilities. That makes sense. Clarifications.
Yes.
Getting back on track that we've danced away a couple times. Skills or things you want to focus on to get better. Either things inside the game or things you can focus on outside the game. Let's start with Hopper here.
Athleticism. That's a pretty short one. I guess I'll go into that a little bit more. I think that athleticism is a big one, partially because most of the time you will be swinging stick, but another reason is because people will chase you. People want to get you out of the game because you're the squishy support, right? All they got to do is just hit you. But another thing is to work on not flinching, and not only in just a physical sense of if somebody swings a stick at you, you flinch because you're like, oh, I don't want to get hit in the face, but also flinching when people start casting at you, or when people start to come at you, that you've trained your brain not to just flinch and go blank. So I would say that those are two main things. What I need to work on, which I already mentioned, is not getting tunnel vision. So, yeah.
You're being aware of your surroundings. Any class gets better by not tunnel visioning on.
It's so bad, man. So bad.
It's hard. I don't have an easy answer to it besides just practice.
You're like a lion, and you look over at that person that you want, and they're like a gazelle, and you're like, oh, I could just sink my teeth into it. And then you got this other lion that's like, oh, no, you don't. And you're like, oh, fuck.
And you get flanked by a lion.
The lion gets flanked by another lion.
Just kidding. Just counterintuitive. Don't get tunnel vision. Kaads, you've hit on it before. Casting while doing your high intensity interval training workouts so that you can cast while dead tired or sprinting.
Oh, and every healer will probably know what I'm talking about here. You are running back and forth across the field, blah, 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 and now you have to cast the full Resurrect Enchant on somebody while you're... Yeah, it sucks. And you have to learn how to do that. You have to, and that has to be trained. That has to be like worked into you, how you can cast while you're super out of breath.
It's it takes a lot of work. Holy crap. Also, just not fumbling your spells when you're tired, because your tongue is a muscle, and if you're tired, your tongue is still gonna think like this. It's not gonna work. Also, I'll quote yeah.
I was gonna, go on with that, and yeah, it's very cold to cast if your mouth, or very hard to cast if your mouth is cold.
Oh yeah,
I've experienced that outside playing.
I don't understand what you mean. When does it get cold?
Shh, Texas. Shh.
It was
Never
like
again.
70 today.
Oh my god, yeah, casting when cold sucks. I'm gonna quote Vitalin again. We floated him a couple times on different episodes, but chapstick is a caster's best friend. So is water.
Yes,
Water,
I was gonna say that.
I don't understand.
Have water with you as a healer, because it will help reduce how much you get tongue-tied, and that it just helps to increase your effectiveness on the field. If you can't cast, you can't heal, you can't do your job. Also, having extra waters for other people, would be very nice. Maybe it gives them healing in another sense.
Fuck them.
I'm pretty sure, I believe it was Spring War. Somebody was running around as a healer. Oh, it might have been Fish.
Yeah, it was.
With a little cart, and she had just bottles of water in it, and she'd offer to heal you.
Would you like some water?
Yeah. I've got heals and water. Take one.
Take one, not both.
I mean, you could take both, but if you take both, you're probably in a bad situation anyways. I have lost track. Who has not answered the skills to focus on to get better? Has that been Kaads? Kaads, I need to ask that question.
No, we touched on it, but definitely cardio. Cardio is something that's going to help you.
Cardio is cardio, but it's definitely gonna help.
Run and cast. At the same time.
Yeah.
For me, when I started, sorry, Kaads, did you have more for yours?
I was just going to say the same thing I said in the Druid video, which is that instead of just doing straight cardio, like a 20-minute run, high intensity interval training does more replicate what you're going to feel what you're going to do on the field. Like, no one plays healer and goes out and jogs on the field for 20 minutes. They're running here, they're stopping. They're running here and stopping. They're running here, they're stopping. And high intensity interval training is basically, instead of jogging for 20 minutes, you're running for 1 minute, and then you're walking for a minute and a half. Then you're running for a minute, then you're walking for a minute and a half.
Right.
That actually sounds very, very good and very applicable to our situation.
Yes.
If you don't have like a Fitbit or anything that watches your heart rate, I recommend getting one and then watching your heart rate during like fighter practice. It's ridiculous because it's like 128 resting, 150 resting. Like, it goes to these ridiculous numbers for like 30 seconds, and then you're done and you're at resting point while you're waiting to get back into fighting. And that's probably what your heart rate's doing most of the time on the field, is your snap action for a little bit, back to a little bit of rest. Probably not down to resting heart rate because you're still under stress, but you're getting up and then down and then back up. Yeah, we've said it several times in different podcasts. If you run, you're gonna die tired, unless you do cardio. So
doing cardio also keeps you healthy, and you guys want to play M-Card for like 50 years, so do cardio, any form of it.
I think cardio, my elbows are gonna give out first.
Your what are gonna give out
my
first?
Elbows are gonna give out first. I
thought you said apples and you were like referring to your balls in some sort of a weird way.
No, my elbows are gonna give out first because my weird rap shots. I'm gonna be the caster on this side of the field that's just like pointing like this because I can't bring my elbows off my chest.
Oh my god. Okay, I have to share something with you. I was playing a healer, so it's applicable, so whatever. Like, the best shot that I have done, but Fog, he's a Paragon archer, and I reached out and I was like aggressively casting at someone, and my arm was like all the way out, and then he shoots me with an arrow from over 50 feet away in my outstretched hand, and guess what he says after he hits me in the hand? Poison arrow. And I'm like, that was the best shot I've ever seen in my life. Oh my god.
That brings up a good point. You can, it doesn't work for healer, but you could be aware of it. If someone shoots your outstretched hand while you're casting, you need another open hand because this one's gone.
Yeah, and that was the problem, was that I usually have a shield. So like I had to like throw it down, but by the time I threw it down, he was like, poison arrow, and I was like,
I mean, as long as he said poison arrow there for the second time, of course.
Yeah, it was the second time. I didn't hear him the first time because he was so far away, which made the shot so good.
Sounds absolutely perfect.
I know, it was amazing.
Just counterspell people by hitting them in the hands when they're casting.
Yeah, aggro actually has done that to me, and
just slap their hand.
Yeah, I was casting at him and he just chopped it off, and I just like quickly. Yeah, I'm still a little bit unsure on how I would rule this, because then my response was basically I didn't stop incanting it at any point, but I immediately then dropped my other sword to open up my free hand to continue my cast, and he was like, no, and I'm like, yes.
That is kind of a weird one, because suppose
it's so seamless though. Then like, even if I mean, I don't know the rule book like the back of my head. Like, I can't quote other classes like you guys do. Like, bless you, for real. But if it was seamless, then like, even if it was against a rule that I don't know about, like, fucking give it to him. Just like, okay.
That'd be kind of a thing where, like, technically aggro's probably right, but if I were reaving, I'd be like, well, as long as you drop
I'll allow it.
As long as you drop your weapon and get a free hand within like a reasonable amount of time. I mean, it's a similar thing for like dropping a shield that's been destroyed. You don't you're not cheating for those 0.5 seconds that you're dropping the shield.
Right. And it was like where I think he was technically correct, because I did not preemptively drop my other weapon. So
I would have turned around
kind of gray area,
and then start casting again.
So I think it falls under the same thing that we have the magic hand swap in our game, where you don't have to drop the weapon upon losing that arm.
Yeah, it's more of a realistic approach to like, yeah, you lost your arm and you can't give something to the other arm with a dead arm because it's supposedly gone, but like, we accept it, we understand it's a game. Right.
I think it falls under that same kind of boundary where you can transfer, you have that opportunity to transfer from right hand to left hand. I think you should have that same opportunity in casting. I would say you have to stop the incant until you open the next hand.
Yeah, I would honestly restart if I was in that same situation, but mostly because if somebody slaps my hand, I'm gonna fumble, and I'm probably gonna fuck it up anyway. It's like,
So I would like to touch real quick on what our current topic. So when I first started as a healer, one of the reasons that I wanted to be in casting was because I learned that I suck at fighting when I first started Amtgard.
That's not true anymore.
Me too.
Well, in Hopper, I think you and I sort of started in like maybe an inverse fashion, because you said you started more on the fighting side.
Yeah.
And I started more on the casting side. And I did that because I realized that I suck at fighting. But maybe I can be good at yelling words at people. So I grew to excel in that, but then the area where I was lacking was still in my fighting, and I had not put any effort into improving that. And when I did begin to improve on fighting, it really helped my overall casting ability, because now you are just more versatile. You're more threatening in that close range. You're somebody who can, survive a little bit better and possibly get kills.
Yeah, and not only that, but as you start to fight a little bit more, you'll notice, like in the very beginning when you play, you're like, oh my God, they're swinging so fast, I can't see it. I can't make out what's happening. And then after you kind of get used to being in the fray and maybe fighting people a little bit more, it's almost like you achieve some sort of a spider sense, or not a spider sense, but like everything starts to slow down a little bit more as you get a little more accustomed to seeing it. So even if you're not fighting as a healer, you can still use that ability. I guess that kind of goes back to like what abilities are good. Getting used to swinging stick can help your world kind of slow down, and you can kind of focus on, is somebody going to hit me? Do I understand the distance between myself and them because I swing stick all the time? And it can help. And I totally agree with you. I think that, practicing your stick even as a support can be amazing. It can help a lot.
I have a kind of a story around this from when we started doing Phoenix League. A friend of mine, Anavrin, who's one of the smartest guys I know when it comes to battle game tactics, we debated back and forth on whether or not I should, as a wizard, take a short sword, because like it is 2 points, but still 2 points. Like technically, what if the short sword's a crutch? And the thing that we decided on was, after watching other wizards go out there who didn't have a short sword, and we found that we could just kill those wizards at will. You could just close on them and just murder them, because they have no way to defend themselves from melee. But if you have a short sword or something, it takes a little bit more time. You can be a speed bump. And now rushing that wizard with weapons, or that healer with a sword and board, it's not a guarantee that you're going to get the kill.
Wizard on wizard crime.
They're not really quite that as much of a gazelle. They might not be a lion, but they might be like, someone capable of like defending themselves. I
now realize that analogy was very presumptuous of calling myself a lion. I am in no way a lion on the field.
You are a tiger and you wear those stripes.
Hey girl, hey.
Hey.
If a wizard has no weapons and you're close to them, anyone is a lion.
That's true. Now, the only exception to that is when they've got that dangly. Oh crap! I forgot if Gift of Air is a white strip or a yellow strip.
It's a white strip.
It's a white strip. They got that dangly white strip, and they're like, Gift of Air.
Pandemic, don't feel that.
Yeah, like that's the only time when I see. Actually, that's kind of weird to think about. My mindset presently, in Polaris at least, is whenever I see a wizard without a stick, I assume Gift of Air. Because otherwise, why not? It's 2 points. There's only Force Bolts down at that level of Spellball, and Force Bolts are good. But if your stick game is moderate to better, especially in single sword, it's probably more effective. And it doesn't disappear when you throw it and have to go find it.
Yeah.
If you're throwing your sword, you should probably stop and rethink your life. I'm so lost. Where are we? We are on skills and things you want to focus on. Are we good with the other questions we've gone through? Do we have any points to go back on? No? Okay. So what are some weaknesses you guys think we need to be aware of? We'll start with Haj on this.
Weaknesses for healer. I guess your offensive capabilities are a little bit limited by, just naturally, you don't have too many weapon combinations. You don't have armor options that are listed within your class. Yes, you're squishy. And then also, okay, so that's how it's limited, like, in the rule book, but healer's really limited, I think, also by, or not limited, but determined by, I guess, the skill of the person who is playing it, and just their analysis and their skill, their speed in casting, things like that. So if you don't have somebody who has those things optimally balanced the way that you need them on your team for your situation, that can be a weakness as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Weakness in the person, not on the class itself. That means the class is probably well balanced. Not
well, as Hopper said, we're squishy. That's kind of our big downfall. That can definitely be overcome through teamwork and other tactics. But I think the biggest and most important variable is the skill of the person who's healing.
That makes sense. Kaads?
I would say, and Hodge touched on this a little bit earlier, is that the archetypes that you select, or the neutrals like Necromancer, they give you huge advantages. They also give you huge disadvantages. If you take Priest, that means you can't attach any meta magic to your teleport, to your spell balls, or probably most importantly from a support standpoint, to your release. And that's kind of where like my Necro Priest build came into play. Like that's my go-to build, is not because of a Greater Undead Minion necessarily, but because what that allows you to do is it allows you to take greater release, experience greater release, and get that greater release back through Steel Life Essence. So you can kind of overcome your weaknesses, but you're still not. That makes you a lot better at releasing, but you're still not quite as good at releasing as just a pure non-priest healer, because that pure non-priest healer can swift their releases and amulet to release and extend a greater release. So that's something to keep in mind.
An extension on a G release.
Yeah,
that's spicy.
It is spicy, but you can't do it if you're a priest. That said, priest gives you huge advantages. In fact, if you're playing a pure support healer in a massive game, I highly recommend taking priest and finding a way to work around the weaknesses that it gives. But you still have to be mindful of those weaknesses. And it does cut a lot of your offense out, because now you can't use meta magic on your offensive verbals.
I 100% agree on both points that both of you guys have brought up, is that it's the subclasses and it's the squishiness. And I oftentimes feel that when people mess up on, it's partially the versatility of the class. So you have all of these subclasses that have these major weaknesses that they have intentionally input into the game because of how versatile the class can be. And that I think that when people make that priest mistake, that they'll use that meta magic on something that they shouldn't, or that they can't, given that they've taken it. And because they can be so versatile, maybe they have different spell lists, and then they're like, oh yeah, oh fuck, I just cheated, oh no. And so I basically feel the same way. It's the squishiness, no armor, and the subclasses.
Now the squishiness you can counter, you can fight and get an advantage on by going and finding a friend who's a druid, right? That's an answer to your problem.
An answer you might not always have, though.
True.
Definitely.
Yeah, our game is made 110% better by teamwork makes the dream work, and we'll hit it in a later question. Who you team up with and how you interact with other classes will make you a way more influential effect on the field. If you know how you interact with different classes on your side and on the opponent's side, you'll find ways to make a difference that you by yourself never could, and it'll make a huge difference overall, because instead of being worth one person, you're now worth 3 to 4 in a 10-person game. That's a huge upset. I mean, in a 200-person game, it's not that big of a difference, but if you got like 20 people doing it, you've now flipped the odds, and you now have, essentially 20 extra people worth of work coming through, because it's being done either more efficiently or more intelligently. All right, got some weaknesses you're going to need to be aware of. Recommended tactics: target acquisition, both offensively and defensively, and the slightly weird question, but an important one, especially at higher levels in kingdom fights. Who do you choose to heal and enchant? So we'll start with just some recommended tactics, and we're going to start with Hopper on this one.
So recommended tactics is knowing, well, I guess that's the second part of it. Target acquisition. So if people are messing with your front line a lot and you're in that sort of center line, or if you're like right behind that front line, if someone's casting at maybe the warrior or at the person fighting in front of you, countercast at them. Target acquisition, they are making it to where your front line can't effectively do their job since they've got the armor and the stick. So take care of that problem, crowd control and get them to move away, keep their focus on you so that the person who is swinging stick can keep their focus on what they're good at.
Supporting, straight up support in that fashion, just making sure that whoever's doing their job is able to continue doing their job.
Oh yeah, I mean if I had to sum up this podcast type thing, then it's like, yeah, help people do their jobs. Okay, podcast is over. See you later.
30 seconds. We're good. Wrap it.
Done.
Haj, recommended tactics.
I'm a huge fan of Gift of Air. I think it's very good for healers. It's very sneaky. You can teleport around with your ice balls and just freeze up people. You can be places where you're not really expected to be, like on the back line. So that's always fun. My main tactic and kind of how I made my namesake, has always been Greater Undead Minion. A tactic I definitely like to use with that is something I touched on earlier, the Battlefield Commander thing. You're in a key location where you can see what's happening on the field. When your gummies come back to you, tell them where to go. Hey, we need some help on this right side. They've got a flank pushing. Let's get all the gummies on that side. Do that. That's probably one of my favorite things to do. And also, this is not entirely related, but playing Gummy for me, or playing Necromancer and taking Gummy, is really a great thing for new players, for players who don't know their abilities. And a lot of new players will play Assassin or Monk. It's just wonderful for you to tell those people, hey, you essentially have unlimited lives, just come respawn at me. And just go out there and have fun. Like, if you die, it doesn't matter. Like, you're not even going to negatively affect the game's death count, whatever. Just go do your thing.
Picking and choosing. Making the new players feel welcome. Good tactic.
Oh, yeah. And
Kaads?
Effective.
Yeah, it is. I mean, nobody expects the... what was it? Rayhawk did it at one of our events where everyone was supposed to be level 3. He just took a ton of Blessing Against Wounds, and no one expects a bunch of these noobs to have a point of Blessing Against Wounds. So you Warlord shot him, you just hit him in the chest and turn, and they say point, and your back's already to them, and you're like, what? And now you're dead.
Oh. Should have double tapped.
Just always double tap. Learn my lesson. Kaads?
I'll expand on something Hodge said on the perfect target for a undead minion. And this is something that there were such good targets that my fighting company would go around and seek them out while we're hanging out at the event the night before a big game. DAG players. DAG players who are showing up to Amtgard are amazing targets for Greater Undead Minion.
Hey man, just come back to me. Don't worry about that respawn shit unless someone says this specific thing or this other specific thing.
Because they're basically playing DAG, like, at that point. Like, all they have to do, is play Monk. They get to ignore most spells, and they just go out there, and you tell them what spells they have to pay attention to, Heat Weapon and Dispel, and that sort of thing. And they just go out there, they kick ass, they come right back to you, you bring them back up. They're essentially playing DAG. If you've ever been to, like, a DAG event, that's how their games are kind of go. They're instant respawn, that sort of thing.
It's a lot more line fighting.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking more about like at like Ragnarok and stuff like that. It is a lot more line fighting, but there are a lot of skirmishers out there and stuff like that.
It's fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun.
I'm just imagining like Errant Dawn running around with a bunch of gray sashes with already built-in strips on them, and just like, wear this. And just like going to the next person.
Don't worry about it.
So yeah, we seek out DAG players. We do that. Another thing to touch on that was touched on before is Blessing Against Wounds. Blessing Against Wounds is something easily cast in the middle of combat. and I believe it's a per life enchantment, so you can take a ton of them and just constantly recast it over and over.
1 point goes a long way when someone's not expecting it. Like a really long way. It's really who did it? Somebody did something weird. They decided to put it on a warrior. I would never think to do that because like they've got their harden, they can't wear the harden and the blessing. But if you get through all their armor, you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you're just like running through it, trying to get through as much as possible. And you get down to it, and you're like, I got the kill, and you turn, and they say point, and you're like, what? It's the same reaction every single time. When you don't expect they have a blessing, you forget to keep rolling.
It's so nice that it doesn't count towards the player's enchantment limit.
Anyway, one last thing on tactics. A bunch of warriors in full 6-point armor and a single water healer that's with them is one of the most bonkers things in Amtgard. It is ridiculous.
Now, are you putting Promag, E-Soul, or...
Yes. You take if you're playing a water healer, you can take water. 8. You can take 8 Promag then, and 10 Enlightened Souls.
Just so, like, because I mean, Promag, then you have the difficulty of, casting your Healy bits on them.
Yeah. Well, they get cursed when they die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enlightened Soul is good, but then you can ice ball their equipment. So both of them have both Promag and Enlightened Soul have their drawbacks, but they both have the huge advantage of being immune to verbal spells and having several points of ancestral armor. Having a bunch of warriors charge your line with Promag on, and even if you're up against a dispel heavy team, like they're going to get a dispel off and then they're going to die. Because if the warriors are being super aggressive and those warriors know, let them dispel at you and then kill them. It's just ridiculous. It's probably one of the single most broken things in Amtgard, to the point where they nerfed it in Phoenix League, where they limited the amount of Promags and Enlightened Souls you can take.
I mean, when we were having wizards and bards be part of the meta, and then you put a Promag on someone, the bard and the wizard just look at each other like, what now?
Yeah.
Like the bard especially, because they got nothing to do. They're like, oh, I don't have a DMag. I am now pointless. I have a stick. I'm a stick. And now when we are enchanting these players, especially with the higher level enchantments, are we using persistent on this every time or not?
You can. When we were doing it for Phoenix League, we weren't. Just because persistent is another point of 6-level magic, and it was like 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other.
Mm-hmm. Are you guys using persistent on the enchantments?
You can't persist as a priest. I just like to point that out. Quite a big limit. I don't generally take persistent unless I am playing warder, and I don't generally play warder. Not that it's not good, I just don't usually do it. However, persistent does have its place on some enchantments. On your more powerhouse ones like the Enlightened Soul and the Promag, it's a little bit more viable. And then so if you are a priest, the only thing that you can persistify would be your mass healing and your Phoenix Tears. It's a little bit pointless to persist the Phoenix Tears as the enchantment falls off when it's been activated. And putting it on mass healing is only applicable for yourself, and I'm not saying that that's not a good option. In some cases, it might be. I don't
generally heal pretty easily, even though it's a long-winded spell. If you can swift heal, then that's usually the workaround, unless, I mean...
Right.
Yeah, but like, the drive-by heal, though, it's not happening.
So good.
So
or
funny.
healing yourself in a fight without needing to open up a hand or stop at all is so good. And if you're playing like combat medic where your stick is really important and you need to be on the front line fighting with your team, then I think having a persisted mass heal is a little bit more viable. Otherwise, I don't usually take persistent unless I'm taking warder, in which case I take persistent.
Yeah,
you got to make those enchantments stick.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you take the extra step in some, especially in the larger battle games, when you do persist something? Do you go tell those players to go find a bard with sleight of mind to make sure that all of your work is not undone by a drive-by wizard?
I usually would have that coordinated ahead of time if we're going to have a bard with sleight of mind. So I would usually try to keep them close at hand in the like casting area for the start of the game. But I don't think I've ever done that personally.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like more often than not, the people that you end up enchanting are the people who like to swing stick more than cast. So then it's this whole other conversation of, what does that do? And then you're like, go have fun.
One thing I'll touch on is
go have fun. Don't worry about it.
One thing I'll touch on is what's better, warder or summoner? And that question is really simple. Do you have a lot of people with close to 6 points of armor on your team? Then warder is really, really good. Do you not have that, which your chances are you're not going to have that? Summoner is really good.
I mean, like another point on enchantments is that if people aren't used to wearing enchantments or even counting points of armor or something like that, then they will forget that you have given it to them.
Yes, that's very annoying.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's something that I've come across a few times and been the dumbass that I do it myself, right? People aren't usually giving the healer another enchantment, right? So I will pick people that if it's an expensive enchantment, then the people that I'll choose to enchant are people that know how it works and that are looking for it, right? And if somebody really needs it but they don't know it, then sometimes I'll be like, hey, do you want this? And even though it would work out really well if they had it, they're like, no, I'm okay. I don't push it, right? If they're gonna forget that they have it, then it's almost better that I don't. And I also don't usually run enchantment builds, so
it's a lot of investment in the party and the team. If they don't know what the enchantments do, then your time to put the enchantment on is wasted, and they probably won't understand or you. I think that's something that both Druid and Healer have a huge problem with.
Just tell them, like, casting doesn't matter mostly, so that one's really easy. But the other stuff is sometimes hard to explain.
Right. If you have to explain 2 points of magical ancestral armor to a new player, that's rough. Like Druid and Healer both have the same situation, at least Warder Healer, where if the people you are enchanting or you want to enchant aren't prepared or in the mindset of knowing what enchantment is, how it works, what they should be doing with it, it oftentimes is less optimized than just keeping them alive and letting them swing stick.
Yeah.
So here's the other bit. And this is one that I think is a little controversial, quote unquote. But it can be used either to grow your park or to be really effective on the field. At a large battle game, who do you guys choose to heal first? Like if you see a monk, a warrior, and we'll say a wizard are wounded, who's your first heal?
I don't think that the class really matters. I think that if somebody, there are plenty of wizards that, maybe their stick is pretty useless, but they can decimate a field with their casting more so than some warriors that maybe might be kind of good at stick. So I think the question of which class they're playing is almost irrelevant, and it's more dependent on the individual player themselves and how effective they are on the field. So choosing your target for who you're going to heal first or who you're going to res first is dependent on what build you have how many reses you got in your pocket at that moment, how fast it's going to take you to get somebody up, but just who needs to be up in this moment, right? So if the flank is doing, so the scenario that I might have is the flank is doing a really good job of flanky flanks, so I want to keep bringing those guys back because they keep fucking up and like they keep bringing more people over to that side, and then you send more people on the other side to do their thing. So yeah, to answer your question, I feel like it's less dependent on the class and more dependent on how strong the individual can either get the objective or kill people.
Yeah.
Person over class.
Yeah.
Kaads, you look like you were about to say something.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. People, not classes. It depends on the situation. Most of the time, it could be like, it's who is the biggest threat. Imagine that you're picking, a team at the beginning of the game, and you have a choice between these three people to heal. Who is the larger threat to the opponent at that given time? Usually it's who the largest threat is in general, but it could be like you have an experienced old dude, who's injured, who is a warlord, but he's old and he might be slow, or a little fast kid, and the goal is to capture the flag, and the flag is right there. So most of the time you want to choose who the bigger threat is. In this case, the somewhat slow warlord. But sometimes the situation calls for you to get a lesser threat in order to accomplish an objective.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to be mindful of that
situation. And what did Teflon say? Objective. You've got to pay attention to what the objective is. If you're not paying attention to the objective, you're not paying attention to what the game's goal is, and you're not trying to win, really.
Yeah, like that one guy who like doesn't swing stick very well and like doesn't know any magic, but for some reason he's really fast and he's really good at running, and you're like, we're playing capture the flag. You're rezzed first.
Now,
Go get it.
Now there can be situations that you're put into, like where if you're on a team, in a team setting, like as in a planned team, like your fighting company is planning stuff, then you might say like, okay, these three people are going to worry about the objective. Everyone else be mindful of the objective, but we want you focused on healing and support. Mm-hmm. And that is completely reasonable.
You're the only person who can touch the skull. I mean, not literally, because it's not jugging, but I mean...
Class jugging would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Imagine playing Phoenix League.
Phoenix League is awesome.
It is awesome. I'm just imagining throwing some jugging rules on top of Phoenix League. Like, you have one quick. You have to like match up the class lineup. Oh, that'd be so weird, and people would get more mad than they already do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god.
Yeah.
That'll be something else.
For me, the res target acquisition, I'd want to know a little bit more information about our respawn mechanic in this situation. So it kind of depends on if it's like a timed respawn or if it's a group respawn, etc. I would also ask those players who were dead, like the warrior, how many armor points did you have left when you died? If they had none, like if everything's gone, or even if everything's gone on their chest, I'll have them wait to natural respawn. I would probably go with the monk in that situation, as they have the fewest amount of per lives. They don't have armor to worry about. And with the wizard as well, like they may need their per lives back. I'm not disagreeing though with the points that were made by my peers about analyzing what are which type of person we need right now as well. But I do think it's important to consider basically you can get like a free super mend, a free spadoinkle on that warrior if you just don't resurrect them.
Right, the way in the balance. Because it is a few, and we did talk about that earlier. Is it worth bringing someone back to life right now where they don't have their points of armor back, they don't have their per lives back, they still like they might be going back in the field half ready basically, or is it worth or is it worth giving them the extra? I mean, the other thing is it worth giving that warrior in 6 points the extra 45 seconds to a minute of rest to let them get back on the field and be ready to, continue wrecking face, instead of like, all right, get back in there. I know you're tired, but keep going, because it could be potentially problematic.
Sucks to be you.
I also
on that plate.
I believe I generally always heal my my gummies first, because I'm the only one who can heal them. They have to come to me to get popped. They all you can also pop them very quickly, and I never underestimate the value of simply having bodies in front of me as a healer. Like, I even sometimes say to my gummies, like, I need you to stand in front of me for a second while I res the rest of these people. Yes, zombie shields. And then if they get shot or something, like, pop them back up, no problem.
Right.
Then get everybody, now everyone disperse.
Makes sense. Using your resources, which in this case are dead bodies that you have made live. Yeah. Use your resources. Combat pairings. We're going to start with Kaads on this, because he is on the is it 3-time winning Phoenix League team, world champion, something winners.
Yes, but I don't play healer.
Okay, but you guys have combat pairings.
We do. So sort of. We have one systematic team on the thing, but we do have combat pairings in massive battles, and throughout that, like, I usually pair myself. Well, first of all, as a healer, you're going to have your undead minions. Second of all, my favorite class to pair with is a druid, because the druid can give me iron skin, and I've already touched on how great ancestral armor is for a druid or for a healer, because you can sit in the second rank. You can just block spell balls and arrows with your armor all day. So that's a good pairing. Monks are a good pairing for Greater Undead Minion. Warriors are a good pairing for pro mag if you're playing warrior. If you're not playing warrior, Phoenix Tears on a warrior, that's probably the single best class to give Phoenix Tears to. A good strategy that I used once is I gave Phoenix Tears to Farley. Farley charged their line, killed a bunch of people, but he was in turn killed because of Phoenix Tears. And I heard him say Phoenix Tears frozen, and I walked up and I greater released him. And when you get greater released, when the frozen state ends, even if you release it, they still get all their armor back. So now they had a 6-point warrior in armor who's a really good fighter behind their lines, and that did not turn out well for them. So yeah, I'd say druid's a good pairing because they can provide you with enchantments and your magic armor, your gift of air if you want. Monks are a good pairing for Greater Undead Minion, and warriors are a great pairing for all of your enchantments.
Haj?
As Kaads said, monks, great for your gummy. Warriors for your enchantments. Druids to protect yourself, to give yourself more sustainability. I personally really like Gift of Air. I also like Iron Skin. You can wear those in conjunction as well to protect yourself even further, but keep in mind that your Iron Skin will trigger taking a point off as your Gift of Air triggers as well. But for me, it's mostly for the Pro Flame, so you can't get Called Lightning. I also really like having a Bard, a battery Bard, because healers have so many per life and rechargeable spells that they use. Having a battery Bard can sometimes just sustain you to a point where you are like a wall on the field. I remember one time Balder and I, so I was playing healer, Balder was playing bard, and then we had another battery bard who was sort of running back and forth to support us. But he and I were holding off at least 15 people just with crowd control, and recharging our abilities.
It works. I mean, that, especially if you take priest, like a ton of your abilities become chargeable, and Song of Power becomes way more viable for a bard, because it's like, oh, he has 1.5 million rechargeable things that I just cut in half, rounded down. Like, a lot of them, all your meta magics go from a charge times 3 to a charge times 1. Like, that's super quick. That's awesome, especially if you're using innate. Like, great. You just cut that recharge down for the resurrect. You went from a charge times 5 to innating it, which turns into a charge times 1 when you're in Song of Power. Like, that was the fastest turnaround ever, and all it took was your friend, stepping back and singing Song of Power for 35 seconds or whatever. It's a good combo. I know I always looked for you on the field when I was playing Bard, because your Phoenix Tears gives me a free slot for my protection enchantments, which are all of my songs. So as long as I wasn't singing Song of Survival and then died, I was fine. Hopper.
I really, I've said this so many times during this podcast, but I really like the fighty, the swingy swing, wacky bats. So, again, being the stick heavy kingdom that we are, more often than not, I'll end up being a pocket healer, and that might end up being like a self-fulfilled prophecy sort of thing, just because I like to fight. So I'll end up pairing with somebody who is like a monk or a warrior or something like that, and just end up doing the pocket healer type bit. And more often than not, what'll end up happening is it's this little flank or this little pocket of people in a game that will push, and then they'll kind of fall, or maybe they'll get legged or something like that. And if you weren't doing your pocket healer role, then they would have fallen back, and then that line kind of goes back and forth with the objective. But since you're there, and the pairing that you have with those martial classes, you end up pushing a little bit. They maybe get wounded, they get healed, push forward a little bit more, and that's usually how it ends up going. So my pairings personally end up being with martial classes.
I mean, it is situational on your kingdom, and that's something why I'm trying to get Paragons from all over, so we're not just being like, this is what Polaris thinks. Yep.
Polaris is amazing, though.
We are amazing, but we have a very specific and particular meta, and we've kind of progressed it really far without asking the rest of Amtgard if they're okay with that. Like, there's some weird things that I've realized of like, we're like, we don't do that anymore. And other parts of the kingdoms are like, oh, we just learned that. And it's like, oh.
It's kind of like seeing the accent in fighting. Mm-hmm. So if you are maybe raised the torches, then you throw a lot of, maybe you have like a board heavy type of fighting style, and if you're raised by like the rogues, then you have like maybe a different fighting style, and then you go to like a kingdom that's way farther away than that, and you have these other fighting styles, and then outside of the fighting area you have the combos, you have the metas, you have all of these things that if you are around long enough, you're like, yeah, I think they're from the north. You can start to sense it a little bit.
I mean, it makes it easy when the caster messes up their spell and they go, oh, and you're like, Midwest.
Oh no.
Combat pairings. All right, so what in my opinion, is probably the most important question that we have to ask ourselves as Paragons, and anybody going for Paragons. How do we get better and not ruin people's fun? Because we're here to grow. We're here to get better. But as a game, we have to keep growing. Otherwise, we're shrinking. So what are some tips and tricks and things that you guys have learned on how to get better in small or large increments, but not ruin park days and everyday fun for everyone else? Kaads?
I would say healer is the perfect one for this, because the only really real way to ruin people's fun as a healer is if you go super offensive healer, which you can do. There have been people who I've seen play healer like that, where they take all the offensive spells, they don't take heal or res or anything like that, and they just go like that. And I would say of all the caster classes, healer is the worst class when it comes to that, for doing that, as I've said before. So the best way to not ruin people's fun is to play your support healer on a class game, and you're just exist to make your team awesome. And if your team sucks, then you're probably going to lose, because the healer is pretty much only as good as their team. So a pure support healer will probably not ruin everybody's fun,
but still get the opportunity to cast your spells, get better, and see those weak spots that you can try to help other classes step up in, making that that battle commander kind of tactic come through.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good way to do it. Hopper?
I very much agree. A healer is usually only as good as their team, but the thing that back around to fighting again. That you don't have to win a game to work on or practice getting better at a smaller portion of your class. So if there's a lot of newer players at your park and you're maybe one of the only veteran players that are there, and it's a life pool game, maybe just don't be a priest. Just let it play out, just because, I mean, if they're all new players and they're all kind of in the same skill bracket, then you could very easily turn the tide of a game and nobody would really notice. They would just call time and they would be like, it's 50-1, and they'd be like, how? And it's something like that. So even though you're not the face of it, and more often than not you're only as good as your team, that's really the only scenario that I see that making a huge impact in terms of not having fun, because usually people get more frustrated at the instantaneous moments of maybe the warrior that decided to come out in like 5 to 6 points and they're the only person on the field, sort of thing. So I really don't see healers ruining people's fun all that often, even though you can turn the tide of a game. So sometimes I will just simplify my spell list if it is maybe just a bunch of newer players, because you change the tide in the background and maybe you just decide not to do that.
Working on specific aspects instead of wrecking some side of the field or some aspect of the game.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Haj?
So I agree with Kaads in saying that you can take fewer offensive verbals to make it less unfun for your opponents. I think it's more challenging to make healer impede the fun of other people just due to its support nature. Not that you can't do it. You can definitely do lots of offensive things. One of the things I mentioned earlier was, putting the gum enchantment on newer players. And as Hopper was saying earlier, when players don't know how to use the enchantment, it's not fun for either party. But gum is a really good one for that, because they don't even have to remember till after they died, and they're like all the way back to respawn, and I'm standing there, and they're like, oh yeah, wait, you're my respawn, I'm a zombie. So that's wonderful. Otherwise, I think too, even when you do take a decent number of offensive abilities, including Astral Intervention, Stun, and Ice Ball being my 3 primary, I don't feel that is as impeding as something like Wizard can be, because it's just less effective, I suppose. If I'm gonna banish you, I have to astral intervention you and then banish you. Not that that's any fun. It just happens less effectively.
It takes longer to pull off instead of just like a one and done spell where something like wounding, you just take somebody's leg and then you literally you leg and leave them from 20 feet away. It's kind of a dick move.
Love it.
Healers don't have that opportunity as much. You've got to combo your things together to try to like make certain things happen, but you still have some of those unfun spells. Like stun is no fun for anybody besides the people that cast it. Like you get to stand there and hope that they kill you, or you can take a death, and it's either way it sucks.
When we were talking about stun earlier, so stun is actually less good than people think it is, and this I would like to explain why. So when I burn my first stun on somebody, because that first one is going, like I don't usually bluff that first one unless I can, but I don't even. Okay, so you stun somebody who's 20 feet away from you, who's in a line. Okay, now what? Like you're not approaching to kill them because they're behind. They're in the line. If they have a support class right near them, they noticed that person got stunned, so they're just gonna get released. Like your stun was wasted, and if your first stun is wasted, your second stun is not scary. Stun is much better in a one-on-one scenario, or in a scenario where they just don't have a way to answer it and that person is just stuck.
Line fighting is so very difficult because sometimes that can apply to some of the best spells. That could even apply to an ice ball if you toss it into the fray and they're behind the line, right? You can't push forward, so you could release somebody from almost anything.
They can get released and you lost your ice ball.
No! Full circle! My ice ball!
One thing I've discovered when taking spell lists is that unless you're in a very specific type of game, like say Phoenix League, where it's very short and quick and very fast paced, but I would say the bulk of games, people fall into a trap of buying a lot of per refresh or per game spells when you will be a lot more effective almost always if you stack a bunch of per life spells and a bunch of reusable, rechargeable spells. Because if you take one stun in a long, like say it's a long game, like a half-hour game, you get off that one stun and that's that point. That's that 1 point of 6th level magic. You just spent it. It's gone. But if you use it on a per life spell, well, how many lives are you going to have in that long-term game? Because if it's a game where like everybody's dying a lot, that 1 point might go towards casting like 10 spells. If you can recharge it, that 1 point might go for even more. So like I said, unless it's a very specific short-term game, you're probably going to be better off spending that 1 point that you're going to use for stun on something else that you're going to use over and over.
Right. And that's the sustainability versus like overall kill. A lot of our kill and high level spells are per refresh. They're a one-shot kill, but if you can figure out a way to make release a kill spell, that's way easier. Like you get a million.
Yeah.
And those things that we can continually use over and over again. And that's why I think Barbarian suffers the most, is it doesn't have any of that continuation where other classes do have that opportunity. And the casters, especially because we get to choose our spell list, we can go into a battle game knowing it's going to be a 45-minute fight and go, I've got one per refresh and it's on recharge. I'm going to be full the entire game. I've got a battery bar that I can go back to. I've got other things I can pull out. Like I'm going to be a full threat the entire time because they're per lives, they're easy to get back, and all my points are going to be used every single life.
Somebody on the other side of the field is just going to be like, oh, he's a healer, he's limited, and you just like whip out your dick like, no, I'm not. Suck it.
I got stuff. So how to get better, not ruin people's fun. All right, so now we're into opinion sections. There have been various opinions flying around Amp Guard about the length of the heal spell, and for that matter, Resurrect as well. Then, so some people are saying that because heal matters so little technically in a game that our lives take 30 seconds to get back, is the heal incant worth it? And should the heal incant be shortened, or should we keep it the same, or even go back to V7-7 where we have to say the sword cut, spear, stab stuff between every other line?
The healing incant's pretty short. What isn't it? Just Swift the White Light of Healing at Fieldy?
Yeah. If you've got the right spells, it is.
There are workarounds for it, so I think that I think you bring up an interesting point, really, about what our game has turned into, considering that a lot of people will make games where we have multiple lives and unlimited lives for objective-based games. So then the heal spell becomes almost useless, like not useless. There's just so many more ways that you can work around it, and half the time people just, like, if they get legged and left, they'll just take a death if the healer's somewhere else, and then they'll just come back. I mean, maybe they might decide not to take a death if they have an enchantment, but that is an interesting point that I haven't really thought about, that there are other ways to bring people back, or that other people choose to return to the game because of our almost always unlimited life type of games. But Haj and I have had phone calls in the past where it's like, okay, how fast can you say the heal spell? You need to say it faster, like, for it to matter. And so like, I can say it fast, but more often than not, people don't really need the heal spell. So I think that it's less of a heal spell length question and more of a just how we choose to play our games.
Right. I know one of the points brought up was for the amount of gain that heal gives, it should be a 1-line or like 2-line incant instead of this paragraph of poem.
I do wonder how our games would change if it was. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, would people play healer more often? Would you have more support on the field just because of how maybe you would have a lot of the selfish healers, meaning that someone is fighting and being that squishy healer, but they just have that selfish heal in their pocket, and then they keep going because it's so fast, and the levels don't really matter because people just kind of play level 6 no matter what. So
level.
I think that you would see more healers if it was shorter. I think that's the main thing that would change.
Yeah. Guys, you look like you want to talk.
Yeah, I'd say I could see heal being shortened, not resurrect though. And like resurrect, priest especially, was kind of built on the swift meta magic. You know, that almost always being used with resurrect, and the only reason you would not swift resurrect is if you're running out of juice. So like if you're running out of swifts and this guy needs to be rezzed right now. So and I have had to cast full reses before because, you know, it was a close game and I had res charge, but I haven't had the time to charge swift just yet. And those times it is valuable to know how to get off resurrect really fast. But I could see heal being shortened because there's very few times when you actually do want to cast the full heal spell. It's kind of usually a bad decision to make, and we want to encourage people to heal people and not just, you know, take a death or wait until they die, because res is just so much more worth it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a thing, is that like if I were in charge of, say, changing the rules or V9, that one of the first things I would say is, how do we make death matter a little bit more?
Losing the enchantment part is definitely a good thing that they put into the rule set. Like, newer players may not know, but if you choose to take a death or take your own life, then you lose the enchantment. So I think that's one way that they tried.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, again, because of the way that we choose to play games, you can just go to the respawn.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Yeah.
that
Now, Hodge, you famously-ish got the spell. You got the incant for heal down to like, it was something ridiculous. Was it 6.7 seconds or 7 seconds? It was something ridiculous.
Yeah, I think it was just under 7. I think 6-7 was probably my best on one of our car rides.
Just a ridiculous speed that I don't know anybody. Maybe somebody could match, but like that's a ridiculous number to get a paragraph into.
I'm sure somebody's topped it. What you have to look at too is the clarity of when you're saying it. Like, I mean, I could say it faster, you just wouldn't be able to understand it, you know. But I've recorded myself too, and then slowed it down, and you can hear each, you know, word and syllable and separate them, even though they all flow together.
Yeah, and
that's just practice. I practice a lot while I drive. I haven't in a while, but you know, just doing that. I've also noticed that, like, generally your first attempt is your fastest, because after you do that and you're like, okay, let me try again. Now your mouth is tired. All right. So now imagine you've been casting like all day. You're probably not going to hit that 7 seconds, but it's still important to try, just so that you have that leg up, so that your tools are sharp for when you need to use them.
Mm-hmm. And this is something to say with Reeves. And it's a really good thing that Hodge brought up, that he played what he said back slowly and you can hear every syllable. Mm-hmm. I've met people who claim to have like the heal spell down to like really short, and this was more in V7 when it was a lot longer and you need to do the sword cut spear stab after each line. They're like, I got it down to 10 seconds, and you listen to them and they do not have it down to 10 seconds. And if you look at like the Guinness Book of World Records, like the shortest paragraph, you know, the fastest talker, they're claiming to beat that guy. Like, and it's like, no, there's no way. So that's kind of something for Reeves to do, and something that I would like to encourage Reeves to look out for. Like, when I first started Amtgard, I thought the incantation for hold person was the words command stop 3 times, because that's what everybody was saying. And it's not. Like, there's like command stop, and then there's a command thee to stop, a command thee to stop, a command thee to stop. You know, so you do have to pay attention to that stuff, especially as a Reeve, because otherwise you're punishing like wizards and casters who actually take the time to do their spells correctly.
Right. There's a my in front of shove. There's an I in front of odd. Like, there's a bunch of these you have to say something, and everyone just kind of goes like, eh, and they're like, that was my me. That's not the same word. You gotta say all of them.
I met a healer once who he said the heal and resurrect incredibly fast, but his diction was way off. Like, he was super fast, but the words were simply omitted or just blurred, and it was really bad. He got his Paragon that event,
my friends.
Yes, and I mean that's the ultimate argument for changing the heal spell is people aren't really using it anyways to its full potential. Like, they're using swift heal, but if they are using the full heal, they're very rarely actually saying all the words, or they're missing something, or they're like, for the longest time I added broken before bone, and there's not a broken in that statement. It's just bone. I was like,
so would you change it to just the first and last line then, if you had like an opinion on that?
Probably something along those lines. There's been different debates on what it like. This gets really, really weird meta. Like, how many words do you have to say to make X amount of effect on the field? And if we use like shove as a boundary, it's like, I command thee shoved 3 times. Or that's the wrong spell. My power shoves thee.
Okay.
Wow, I just bungled that. My power shoves thee. So it's 4, 12. You have to say 12 words to push someone 20 feet. So if that's the influence on the field, how do you match a 20-foot push to a heal? What word limit do you need to mix it up and things like that? And I'm not going to try to fix that answer. I'll let other people try to figure that out. But
we just got my kitty as a special guest star.
Yay, kitty! I saw Jess's dog in the background a little while ago.
Jumping on the bed.
But it's, I don't know. We'll see what happens in V9 if they decide to change the heal spell to something shorter, or if we fundamentally change the way we play games and the heal spell becomes much more important again, because it's more important to keep someone alive with that heal than it is to just let them potentially die. Oh no, we lost Kaads' video.
I do think in general that they shouldn't go back. I mean, I didn't play the previous versions of the game, but Jamie tells stories all the time that what would end up happening when lives did matter more is that when they were usually limited and then you had to sit out for however many minutes per life you had, a lot of people were like, well, I mean, I guess I don't get to play anymore unless I'm really, really good, so I guess I'll just go home.
Right.
So I really hope that they don't go in that direction.
I don't think they probably won't. They probably won't, yeah.
I agree. I think that's the opposite of what we want. We want people to be able to play. One of my biggest...
even if they're bad.
Oh, especially if they're bad, I think. Because that's...
Wait, too far.
Well, those are the people who need the field time for improvement. And those are also the people who...
Very true.
We want our game to grow. So we want these people who are coming out for their first time to have a great experience. That's one of the reasons I love Healer too, is because you are able to more easily give that to new people. Whereas I'm playing Wizard, like, my job is just to shut people down. So, sorry if you're new, but you'll be doing nothing.
That is Hajj in a nutshell.
Yeah, for real. My opinion on shortening the heal spell, I wouldn't actually, because I feel that it gives importance to your Swift. It makes your Swift that much more valuable. So now if Swift is basically only going to be used for Resurrect, then you always have Swift Resurrect. Like, I think it makes that too easy.
Maybe they would also shorten the limit on Swift. I mean, Swift is already limited to, I think it's the 2, but maybe that would end up being smaller if you were only really using it on one of your longer spells, and then the other longer spell is like Gummy and P-Tiers. But those aren't nearly as widely used, in my opinion.
It depends. I mean,
good suggestion.
And I'm used to taking Necro Priest, which means I have to incant the entire incantation of Greater Undead Minion.
Yeah. I will state the game, whoever wrote those incants, because I know that different people wrote different parts of the spell books and the whole game as a whole. Whoever wrote Heal, Resurrect, Greater Undead Minion, and Undead Minion, I like that they follow the same format. That's really nice. It allows you to learn them all kind of at the same time without having to learn like a bunch of really weird incants like the Druid does, like Lycanthropy and Corrosive Mist, and a bunch of the spells are like song lyrics basically, and you're like, I don't know what this has to do with anything, but at least Healer's got some kind of like mentality to it. Okay, so we've got audience questions. We answered most of them. The one that came up that didn't fit very well was, is there a level 1 through 3 healer build type that is particularly simple both to play and to play with and around? I'm thinking of small parks of new players that come to park are small packs of new players that come to Park with the idea that one of them will play a healer. How do I give them advice on a build type so that the little pack of the new players will have fun?
I'll say right off the bat, I've only ever played 6-level healer, so someone else will have to answer this one.
Whoops.
At least in V8.
Whoops, I totally messed up. I'm doing push to talk. But for the build, honestly, I would probably just I would give them some of the smaller sort of crowd control or the offensive spells, like up to level 3. I believe that you get what was it? I'm pretty sure Astral Intervention. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there are some offensive spells that you can have as a healer, and then of course you still have heal. But I mean, you don't have the swift, so you can still you can take some weapons and then maybe play a selfish healer while you get that heal spell down, since it's not shortened in our current game. And then you can also have those simpler offensive spells to kind of get the casting bit down. So I think that I would take a little bit of the offensive spells, maybe a little bit of weaponry since you don't have the higher level spells, and be a little bit of a crowd control while you get used to saying the heal spell.
I think it is challenging to have a new player, not only to have them play healer, but to have them want to play healer or to have them enjoy playing healer. Because at a lower level, or rather at a level that you don't have access to Swift, that means you need to say the entire heal spell, or resurrect enchant. And as we were just discussing, that can be a challenge, and especially for newer players. And I mean, for somebody who hasn't memorized that spell, it's basically off the table. Like, it's essentially not even an option to do that. Because your best option would be to read it off of a piece of paper or as it's written on the back of your shield. Neither of those are great options. But that's where you have to start. So once you get your heal spell memorized, it doesn't have to be fast when you're starting out. You need to have it memorized. That's when I would recommend playing healer, because otherwise you're not going to have fun with it. Your team is not going to enjoy having you as the healer because you're not effective at your main role.
I mean, one thing you could do is you could take innate, right? And then that would maybe help with some of the charges, like since you get resurrect at level 3, but that's really one of the only shortenings that you get. Like you said, without Swift, that's hard to do.
Right. Yeah, you'd cut down on your charge time, but there's just the hurdle of
it's not the same.
I wouldn't want somebody, to have that pressure put on them as a new player and then to basically fail and think like, man, I wasn't able to do my thing. It's just go in prepared.
Builds character. Let him fail.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, everybody needs that pressure, but and if you're gonna go into the game with your spell list written out, like with heal written on there, if that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do to learn. But there are at level 3, like you said, you get medium board. You have some offensive spells: Astral Intervention, Shove, Ice Ball. If they have Ice Balls as a newer player, if somebody can lend them some.
Yeah, that's great.
Entangle Balls, again, if they have them as a newer player. Otherwise, though, just a basic sword and board healer, and then take your first few field days to try to learn the heal spell. Go for it. Don't expect too much out of yourself right away.
It's din time.
Lucky you. I lost my train of thought. Oh, you also have something that I realized on that. If they're at level 3, you can give them the undead minion. They have the undead minion, so there's some uses there if they want to play that.
And they don't.
What?
I said, and they don't.
They don't. If someone wants to play an undead minion, I mean,
yeah, I don't even know if I would use undead minion. I mean, I didn't learn about like the necro type stuff that you could do until much later on. But I mean, I don't. Maybe I'm just looking at it from like a level 6 point of view, but it's like, fuck undead minions, useless as shit. But like, that's coming from like a why take undead minion when you could take Gummy. So
right.
Maybe I'm just looking at it from a weird perspective.
I mean, it's the same kind of ideas like Contagion or something like that, where it makes a weak. It's a trade-off spell instead of a straight-up advantage. It's a right. You get some benefit for a downfall. And I mean, if those kids, the pack of players want to just run, if they're playing, monks at level 1, I mean, they probably don't really care if they're fragile. That just means they get to run back to their friend, get rezzed, and then go beat someone else. Like, it's a lot of lives. It's a cheap way to do the greater undead minion. They're just fragile. But that also means they don't have to deal with the leg and leave or the get armed, and now you have to figure out how to fight with your offhand. You're just dead. Go back, get to the field. I think it depends on your group of people, what their intentions are, what the field is going to look like. Talking over with the players what they want to do, I think is probably your best bet on that one, Bronzeboar.
Agreed.
We had another question. Is taking a flail really worth it, or is it better just to stick to a medium shield?
Why not both?
That was,
Porque no los dos.
My favorite combo is a flail and a small shield.
I mean, that's what, 5 points? 4 points? 5 points.
Yeah, small shield is the same number of points as medium shield for healer. It's just at a lower level, so then it becomes easier to take that hinged.
Mm-hmm.
I have found though that a newer player with again, this is coming from a kingdom that has a lot of players that use sword and board. If you are using a hinged weapon, so a hinged weapon is 3 points, and a short sword is also 3 points. So if you don't feel like you can get around all of these sword and board players, and you're maybe newer, then a hinged weapon might give you the opportunity to be that one pump chump, but like at least you can get around the board if you're having trouble with it. So it really is kind of based on your play style, but I have found that people aren't used to it, at least down here, because a lot of people will just use a sword. So it might yield more results of killing people if you get stuck in a bad situation.
It's also, I would not put a flail in the hands of a new player. Just personal experience.
Oh, where does it
go? We get enough headshots from new players with straight sticks. Giving them a hinged is probably just asking for trouble. Just my opinion. So those are the ones that we had posted. Do you guys have any constructive spicy takes about healer?
Spicy takes?
Like any hot takes you have about Paragon or healer. I was asked if I should bring this section back from my first episode, which was basically Broton, myself, and Balder doing hot takes for like 30 minutes about Paragon and stuff, and some of it worked.
I'm gonna have to Google
all right.
Hot takes are, because I guess I'm just confused.
Here's a good example of a hot take. If 100% of the time you play as a respawn healer, where you sit at respawn and just recharge, summon, dead, and resurrect and all that stuff, if that's all you do, you probably shouldn't be a Paragon healer, because you're not demonstrating.
I think, that would be a hot take. I mean, there is a time and a place for it, but if it's all you can do, then no.
Yeah.
No.
We want versatility.
Paragon is able to play the class in like every way. And I think Kaads touched on this a little bit earlier, but a healer is one of the most versatile classes. In my opinion, it's the most versatile. Second to Bard, and then to Druid. And what I mean by this is you have the most different ways to play the class rather than the class basically being railroaded. So with wizards, I find them to be the least versatile in the ways you can play them, because wizards play mainly DPS. You can do a little bit of support, but it's mostly DPS. That's 90% of your gameplay. Healers can completely switch it up. You can be offensive, you can play support, you can play midline, anything. I like to play as an annoying mosquito. Take Gift of Air, Gift of Air, and Spellballs, and then verbals, and then you go around and you just annoy people. But there are so many different ways you can do it. I had a lot of fun writing different healer lists. One of my later ones was the Assassin Healer. You take 2 short swords and as many, so you can play Florentine, and then as many like assassin-esque abilities as you can. So you've got your teleports, your ambulant banishes, your circle of protection, all that stuff.
And you whole person.
Oh my god, I love it. Oh my gosh.
Hold person, instant life.
Good stuff.
That's nasty.
And I could see an argument for someone like who only plays like one style of healer for Paragon Hood. If they play that one style really, really well, like one of the best healers in Amtgard really, really well.
They're like, the thing that comes up with that is if you have like the best healer in Amtgard, they already know how to play the other styles. Like, you don't get to the top of the top by only playing singles. Like, if you look at even our top tier fighters, absolutely. None of them are top tier fighters in just one section. They are good in everything else. They may excel in sword and board.
Mm-hmm.
I agree mostly.
I mean,
but only because the fighting kind of translates to everything that you do. So I mean, if you're good at healer in one way, it's probably going to translate to other things that you do.
Yeah,
like you were saying. If you get really, really good at Resbot, which I will say, I've seen some Resbots that just literally nonstop talk for like 30 minutes through a battle game while I'm sitting there singing Song of Power, and they just like res someone, immediately go into a recharge of all of the abilities they just used, and then go straight back into the res. Like, if you can do that for 30 minutes, I'd like to see you play the other ones, but then I'd probably be like, that's fine. That's a lot of fun. My quip with it is that the amount of time that it takes for someone to go back to the respawn is a lot of wasted time when you could have just been closer.
Yeah. I have seen healers run Greater Undead Minion who all they do is sit in base and restore their Greater Undead Minion. It's like, it would have been a lot better if you would have gone with the Greater Undead Minions and then been right there when they needed backup.
Yeah, I mean, it's
they're just a limited class that's going back to respawn anyway.
Yeah, that's something I've seen, and it frustrates me a little bit whenever I play Heart of the Swarm as a bard, and I'm like, all right, Resbot crew, move out, and they're like, what do you mean we're moving? And we're like, I'm moving the respawn, we're going over there, and they have no idea what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that could be a hot take from me, but something I see healers doing at what I think would be wrong, maybe this could go back to tips or whatever, but don't stand at respawn when you are playing Resbot. You need to stand like 50 feet away from respawn, 50 feet towards the front line, because your Summon Dead spell has a 50-foot range. So you essentially move the respawn up 50 feet while you do that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess something else I would have liked to know when I had started out, when you cast Summon Dead, you can move after you cast it, and then the player who you summoned has to move to your current location.
I loved doing that. That was fun crap. We did at Keep. Like, you summoned my corpse, and then you sprinted across the field.
Yeah.
And
people hitting along the way. I'm dead. I'm trying to get to my.
He sprinted along the line. I think you cast it on 2 other people as well. Like, you stopped, cast it at someone else, and then kept going. And we're just like all trying to keep up with you. It was it was like, oh, that it's a great way to move people to where you want them. They have to come to you now. Like,
now it's like a group respawn. All right, everybody, get in line.
I needed you on this flank, and I didn't have time to explain. Ha! Just drag people with you. Do we have any more constructive spicy takes? I say constructive because some of our first ones were not constructive.
What is y'all's take on the selfish healer? Right, so they don't take much. They just end up being like a fighter that just wants to take the heal spell. So, what do y'all think about that?
Definitely not the optimal way to play the class, but probably a lot of fun.
I think it's great in smaller games where your stick is more important, so maybe you need to be the fighter for your team. So that means, no, my mass healing persisted. Those are for me, actually.
Can you res me? You're not on the list.
Sorry, my resurrect is self only.
I am the bouncer and the club.
I mean, it in like a large battle game, if you're being a selfish healer, there are other classes you could play and be better.
Let's say that you want to learn how to play an offensive class, or offensive casting class, and you're a 6th level healer and a 1st level bard. The 6th level healer will probably be the more powerful of your choices, but I'd start working on that bard.
Yeah, I could probably switch to bard. That might be.
As soon as you get to level 3, you've got Oz, and then you just don't care about multi-person combat. You just are a one-on-one machine because you're like, oh, there's 5 people? Odd. You. Yeah. You just single target people because they're not odd. Or you insult them and they get really confused because people always forget that insult means they can't attack anyone else unless they get attacked, and they can't target anyone else unless they get attacked. It doesn't mean they have to move to you. They can go run off in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
They just can't do anything. They can't target anyone, including themselves.
No.
I love the role play of it, though, where it's like, I fucking hate you! Ah!
That is entertaining. I did see Aggro found a way around it, which was a really smart way to do it, because I used the same tactic on him when I used Awe. If I awe someone, I will often charge at them and hold my sword back and say, I am not attacking, this is not hostile. And they have to stay away from me. He did the same thing with insult. He got insulted, and then he ran into a fray and said, I am not attacking, this is not hostile, and got beat on. So he got like points taken off his armor, but as soon as they attacked him, he could attack back. He just countered the insult by using a situation.
That feels pretty skirting the line.
I felt it was fine. I charged at him at the same time using Awe. Like, I was not attacking. I did not cast at him.
If you charge at somebody, even if you claim, like, this is not hostile, but, like, come on.
It's technically not hostile. Technically.
That's
which is the best kind of right.
That's your perception.
Technically correct. The best kind of correct.
Yeah. I mean, I never swung a stick at him while he was under Awe. I never cast another spell at him while he was under Awe. So I didn't break any of the rules. I did sprint at him at full speed.
It was your body language.
See, but that's the problem.
Your hostile body language.
We don't have a term. We don't have a specific breakdown of what that means. So it is weird. Like, we had to literally break down what it meant to me to move directly back to base with Banish and directly to your location with teleport. We had to break it down that, like, you have to move at a moderately swift pace because people are just like, I'm getting there. I'm going that way, but I'm getting there eventually.
They changed that. You have to. When did that change? Because I like to walk slow.
Well, so they said direct. Basically, it was stopping people from taking a left turn and going way off in the wrong direction towards their.
Yeah. It does have to be direct, but it doesn't specify speed.
No, so you have to move towards it.
Right. It's probably like the path of least resistance to the base is probably how it would be defined, because there are certain things you're not able to step through or step over. But yeah.
I need to go straight through that warrior. So I'm going to do...
Well, like, I mean, I've considered sometimes just, like, walking into people, like, you're in my direct path, bro.
Bro.
It's, yeah. We need some more definition in our book, but we'll see what it comes to.
I usually just kind of, like... If I'm gonna run into somebody, then I know it says direct, but I'm just gonna like take the tiniest little like half circle around.
That's a safety thing more than anything.
Oh yeah, like if I'm dead, right? And then there's people fighting over me, and I'm like, I'm moving for safety, but I would still like to be rezzed, please.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, because that could be a real big problem if we decide to teleport a 6-point warrior, and we're like, that's your line, and he just barrels through 15 children.
He's a bulldozer, and he's like, I don't care. I follow the rules.
He's insubstantial, so technically he doesn't touch them. Technically.
But he can be seen and heard, and all of the children are screaming.
Right. Do we have any more constructive spicy takes?
Yeah.
Constructive.
This could be considered something. Something I thought of earlier, then forgot, just remembered. But playing as healer for me was my first class that I took seriously, and it taught me so much about the game, and I think it's because it's a support class, so I learned basically what I need to release people from. Like, you learn what answers you have primarily, but now you need to learn, okay, what am I answering? And that taught me how to also prioritize what I'm going to answer. Like, this person is stopped. Well, I don't really care, because this person is frozen, and we're gonna fix that first. And that also taught me then to learn all the other incants so that I could react more quickly. So when I hear somebody begin an offensive incant on one of my teammates, I can more quickly analyze what answer I need to come up with. And I don't know if I would have gotten that proficient had I started with another class. But I do know that healer taught me so much, just because I needed to know all the different answers and when to answer them.
Your interaction, if you are going for Paragon and you don't know how your class interacts with every other class in the field, not necessarily better than those people that are going for Paragon in that class, but better than the average person, you're probably not studying hard enough. That's one of my takes, is like you have to know, you can't be amazing at just your stuff, because your stuff interacts with everyone else, and you have to know how that reaction happens. So if you come across a situation that you've never been in before, you know how it should play out, or you know what you can do to get out or advance that situation in the way you want it to go. Because otherwise, you're going to get in a bunch of situations that you're not prepared for, and you're going to freeze up and not have, you're not going to play well. You're going to...
Absolutely, yeah. Like, at the very least, knowing that, classes are immune to certain abilities. Like, you can't say certain things to a barbar. You probably got to shove them.
Mm-hmm.
Can't tell you how many abayances I've thrown at a barbar.
Or paladins have an immunity to command and death. So if I gave him immunity subdual with protection from subdual, then yeah, that's going to be awesome on that paladin.
Completely agree. Very good Very good talks.
So what is he immune to? Everything that matters. All right.
Yep.
Like you look at that, you ask what they have on their enchantments, they state it, you go, all right, I need a wizard that has heat weapon or a druid that has heat weapon, because otherwise this is not going well.
Or lightning bolt to the shield.
Lightning bolt to the shield will work as well. You just got to have not most classes.
Yeah.
Like a bard looks at most paladins and anti-paladin and he goes, so somebody else has got him, right? I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with that.
About face somewhere else.
I'm out.
I guess another hot take I have. It's not necessarily constructive, just sort of an opinion thing on how to gauge your reflecting on your skill level. So, in my opinion, one Paragon should be able to handle roughly 3 to 5 average players, average or lower tier, maybe. Well, I suppose, whatever.
We'll just say average players.
Right. I would say, for the most part, average players are less skilled, just because our average does consist of a lot of new people, right? So when I say average, I don't mean mid-tier. Average is usually more like lower tier fighters.
Kind of like the average Amp-Guarder will probably not have 5 warriors. They'll have like 3.
So I believe personally a Paragon in their class should be able to handle or require 3 to 5 people to deal with them, or one Paragon. I believe that Paragons generally can cancel each other out when they're opposing each other on the battlefield. Otherwise, that balance is 3 to 5 of your average players. One way that I've gauged this is once I froze 5. It was a 5v5 game, a small game in our park. But I froze the entire team with one ice ball. The same ice ball. Just kept bouncing it off people and picking it up.
I would love to hear that story.
I've done that before, and it's a really good feeling.
That's why you got to get bouncy spell balls. So you can just like, pa. Like you throw it, it hits their shield, you catch it again, you keep incanting.
You guys can even reconsider my fabric.
One time I actually caught the spell ball off the bounce.
Just
only one.
Dope stuff. That's like awesome. Bouncing an arrow off of multiple shields and pinning them all. It's great. God. But that is kind of the statement that we are asking for Polaris specifically, and I think we hold our Paragons to a somewhat ridiculous standard sometimes, where we ask them to be stupid good at battle games, and then we also just kind of ignore the fact that we should roleplay and have costumes and stuff, which Haj did a very good job of having a costume for different styles. I did not as much. I'll be 100% straightforward on that. I got my Paragon and I realized I was like, oh, I role played like twice. And we don't do a great job of making role play off main focus, but we do make sure that our Paragons are deadly on the field regardless of what class they are. And that 3 to 5 ratio, I think most of our Paragons ask for a 5 ratio more often than not, because it is we want them to be really, really strong and really, really powerful. I
mean, just as there are ranges in Paragons, there's ranges in Warlords. I mean, somebody has to be at the bottom.
Yeah. But it's also, to your point of the Paragon should be able to counter a Paragon, that also comes with knowledge. Like, if a Paragon Bard, goes up against a Paragon Paladin, my ass is grass. I'm done. I'm not going to have a good day. Like, there is no point for me to try that fight. But knowing that, I should never go 1v1 against a Paladin. I should go get a friend that knows better. And that's, I think, another part of the Paragon experience and being a top-notch Paragon is you can go look at the field and be like, I am useless on the right flank. There are 3 Paladins and 2 Barbarians. I'm a Bard. I will have no time to do anything for them over there. I'll go someplace else. And realizing that you do have weaknesses and where you are utilizing your time and abilities is just as important as knowing your abilities more of the time, in my opinion.
Yeah, but if you look at the whole fucking field and you're like, nah, maybe reconsider.
That's true. We don't have nearly as many warlords and sword knights up here as you have in Texas. So there's way less paladins.
Y'all are really new compared to the CK, so I mean, that shit takes time.
That's true.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Paris also doesn't have as big of a fighting culture.
That's true. We have a much bigger battle game and strategy culture, which makes
Dungeon Day is dope. We don't have anything even close to that down here. We are getting more role players, though.
That's good. That's a benefit. Do we have any more constructive spicy takes?
I've got something, kind of.
Yeah.
Again. So, I wasn't really sure how this fit in, but one thing I really enjoy doing as healer is playing in quests. Healer is my favorite class to play in quests. You can apply this slightly to battle games as well, but you get to play politically when you play healer in a quest. You can be everyone's friend. I did meet one healer one time who was doing a similar thing in a battle game. He had Gift of Air. He was on the enemy team. He was in the back line being an annoying mosquito with ice balls, but he would also offer to heal us sometimes or release us sometimes. So we're like, oh, okay, sure. I mean, he'd still hit you with an ice ball sometimes, but he'd also heal you sometimes. So whatever.
Questionable morality?
I'm on my side.
Especially though, in quests, you can really leverage your abilities to your advantage. You can get free stuff from people, like you can get candy and soda for healing people. You can get in-game currency. That's usually how I charge. I charge in-game currency for my abilities to people. And I just wander. Like, I'm the wandering healer who, like, just ends the quest with a whole bunch of currency and, like soda and stuff that people give me. It's so much fun. Like, I don't usually care about game objectives too terribly much, but it makes it so much fun to... Oh yeah, I don't.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just gonna say, like, when I play healer, I just kind of do my thing.
So I like healer for going on quests for an entirely different reason, and that reason is this: what are monsters generally good against? What do monsters give players a hard time with? I will say that 5 undead minions is not the answer to that question. 5 undead minions will destroy just about every monster encounter. Once I was in a quest and there was a monster guarding something that we weren't supposed to get, and that monster had a polearm, and that polearm swung siege. Which, to people who don't know, means that if it hits you or your equipment, you're dead and all your equipment's broken.
You fucked.
Well,
long story short,
one of my minions, undead minions, dodged the polearm and pinned it to the ground with his weapon. He didn't get hit with it, so it doesn't count as a hit. So cheesy, but while he was pinning this polearm, we stole all the quest items from that area.
Amazing.
I mean, it's an endless supply of bodies you're kind of just throwing at a wall, like.
Yeah, and most monsters don't have dispels or anything like that. That usually counters greater undead minions. So
no.
One of my first is for a quest, which I've unfortunately never been able to pull off, but it still sounds like fun. Set up a necromancer toll bridge or a toll road. So I was in the Rising Winds and I wanted to get 5 gummies to just hang out with me on this main path, and every time somebody passed through it, just make them pay me or have all the zombies attack. I couldn't get enough zombie volunteers, but I mean, it just sounds like fun. Even if that's all I did the whole quest, would be like sit by this main path and jump out like a bridge troll.
Mm-hmm. Pay me or all my. Yep, pay me or all my minions will attack.
All right, so I think we're gonna open it up so everyone can talk. We've got 2 questions that are loaded from our audience. So give me a second here, and hopefully this this setting works well, and I don't have to unmute everyone individually.
Oh shit! What up?
Did it work?
I think they're still muted.
Oh, it is still server mute. This is annoying. Okay. I'm just gonna have to go through and unmute everyone. So while I'm doing this tedious annoyingness, our first question was opinions on adaptive blessing versus adaptive protection from Omet.
I feel like since adaptive blessing is just like cheaper, I would probably take that.
Both of them are kind of lame, honestly. Like they're good for very specific things. Like if you like I said, a protection from subdual on a paladin is pretty good, but the blessing is still per refresh, so you only get one, and then it's gone. If it were, that's one thing, is that if like the blessings were, per life or something like that, or chargeable somehow, they'd be worth it. But not
the adaptive
really.
blessing is per life. Isn't
it?
Oh
yeah. Is it?
It is.
I don't think it. Oh, okay.
It is. Adaptive blessing is, but the protection's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that was the only reason.
I gotcha. Okay, so I'm wrong there, but I really don't use either that much unless I'm doing if I'm doing something really specific with a specific person on my team who wants an adaptive protection, I'll get that. But adaptive blessing, I rarely take.
Hangman said adaptive blessing is for setting up patterns, make someone resistant to subdual until the enemy gets used to it, then switch it up for command or sorcery. Adaptive protection is great when combined with a persistent, because it's usually not high priority for dispels, especially with dangerous terrain, persistent AP, adaptive protection, flame half your team in a bridge battle over lava. Yeah. I like the idea of using the per life one to kind of trick your opponent into doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
That is true. One thing.
Then it's kind of based off of you dying, and you shouldn't be dying.
Or a battery bard giving your stuff back.
One rule of thumb I take when making my spell list is like, when I look at things like adaptive protection, adaptive blessing, those are things that might help. I try to focus on less things that might help and more focus on things that will help. Do you know what will help? An ice ball. Like there's no scenario that I'm not going to be using that over and over throughout the scenario. I might take adaptive blessing and adaptive protection and never use it because it might help, but it might not help in that specific game.
That's probably a good recommendation for the lower level question that we had earlier, is that that is a way that maybe you can make a difference where you don't have that cover all like e-soul or protection from magic, but you can give them that one protection or that one blessing, and if you take the blessing, it's once per life. Just keep handing them out.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
A newer player might not have that knowledge to apply the protection, but it is still a great option if they do have that knowledge. I think, and I like the points that Hangman brought up about how to use it. I think those are some very good points.
Another disadvantage of those spells, unfortunately, and I wish this weren't the case, but if I gave someone a blessing against command, they will probably forget that they have it.
True.
Unless the bard's being really annoying. Like because I like playing bard, and I'll play it fairly often, and when I step on the field and there's a healer on the other side, that immunity to command comes out pretty quick. And they don't forget then, because they just remember that they don't have to listen to me half the time, or like 90% of the time, which is really frustrating as a bard.
Yeah, it can be really good if you're up against a bunch of casters, but you don't know what what exactly they're going to be casting. And so you take a bunch of adaptive blessings, and then the next round you're like, okay, that bard has to go. I'm going to give 3 people adaptive of blessings for command, and you guys just soak a spell and charge him.
Mm-hmm. But that's once again training your park and your populace to understand what the enchantments are used for, and especially when to ask for them. Like if they realize they're being kind of set aside by a bard by using awes and insults, and they ask for that immunity, they're probably going to remember they have it. Instead of you having to realize that that's a problem and then giving it to people, they'll most likely forget because they didn't think of it themselves. Bronzeboard got... Okay, so... Okay, if Heal and Enchant is too much for new players, I think I could talk them into a Blessing Against Wounds and release build as an alternate. What's a brief priority list for them to target with their release spells? I want to say release should be an offensive spell more often now, especially if you have ice balls. Holy crap. Nobody expects to be killed because you have release. It's hysterical. I had to explain this on a podcast, a class that yesterday. The reason that touch spells work on frozen players and insubstantial players that can't move are 2 things. Specifically... I'm going to go to the rule book so everyone can follow along, and we can make sure this gets used correctly. Okay. In number 13 on page 73 of Common Misconceptions in the rule book, 13 says, in order for an unwilling player to be affected by touch range magic, which is release, they must be frozen, stunned, dead, or unable to otherwise fight and move away. This, for example, means a frozen monk is not immune to shatter used at a range of touch. A player who is just stopped but has no weapons is still considered able to engage in combat, and so must be willing in order to be affected by touch range magic or abilities. So, you ice ball someone, they become frozen, you walk up to them, they are now a willing player for release, you find the weak spot in their armor, or you go behind them, and then you cast release and you stab them a bunch of times before they can turn around. It's really funny, because release is a first level spell and you killed them with it.
I wrote that specific blurb in the rulebook that you just read off.
Yay! Awesome. I thank you for your contribution to my kill streaks. It's pretty big. Like, it was literally Balder, Haj, and I running around, and Haj would ice ball someone, and Balder and I would get right behind the player. One of us would release them, and there'd just be like a flurry of daggers down their back. We didn't care how many points of armor they had. We can hit you more than 10 times in a half second when we know what's happening. It's mean, but it works.
I think the suggestion to replace the heal spell with Blessing Against Wounds until you have learned the heal spell, I think that's a good idea. Because Blessing Against Wounds...
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it's per life. It's really easy to say. You can get it quick. And it kind of does the same thing instead of being a reactive thing, it's a proactive protection. I would still absolutely work on your heal spell. Taking, the blessing does not mean, well, now I don't need to learn heal. You really should.
Mm-hmm. I'd also like to say, everyone can unmute themselves now. I got the server unmute to go. You just have to personally unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. Weez asked, top verbals to use experienced on besides teleport.
Greater Release.
Absolutely, Greater Release.
I'm pretty sure I've used it on Mend.
Greater Release are numbers 1 through 3 that I use. It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
I don't think I've played healer that didn't have experienced Greater Release, honestly.
It'll usually be so like if Jamie has a lot of armor or something like that, I'll be like, ugh. For the people who aren't watching the camera, I just like roll my eyes and like, all right, I'll help you.
It depends on your situation, I think, a lot. Also, there are only 2 classes Yeah, 2 classes that get greater release. And yeah, it's only 2. It's Bard and Healer. That's it. That's it. And they can be used to take Elemental Barrage off a wizard.
Yep.
Stop a Raging Barbarian, the fight after death. You can take off all the states and ongoing abilities, like Awe, Insult. You can't technically do it to Agoraphobia unless you put them in a corner, because it's their job to stay away.
Yeah.
You
can do it with an extended one, but
yeah, it's true. If you want to extend it, it's a little rough.
I just remembered one of my favorite healer tactics, and that is steal life, charge steal life.
Oh yeah.
My God. I remember one Spring War, I just wore Gift of Air and like kind of meandered around the enemy's front line, and every time one of them would die, just steal life, charge steal life.
Yeah. You can use Steal Life Essence to charge Steal Life Essence, and you can do that indefinitely and curse an entire team.
Sometimes I'll end up using Steal Life on my own team if it turns out that the lives and them being temporarily cursed isn't really that big of a deal, and I'm more like doing some sort of crowd control or maybe helping along the front lines in a way that needs those spells. I'll just be like, oh, you're dead? Okay, thanks. Steal Life.
Yes, Hopper, I've done that exact same thing, and people look at me like, excuse me?
They're like so offended, like, I thought I was your friend. Why would you do that?
Go respawn. I needed that life essence.
Yeah, you're fine. You'll be okay.
Mend is another good one to, as I mentioned before, that's a good one to experience.
Bitch, I said that.
Yeah. Well, I was going to bring up specifically with that because I did bring it up earlier, the poor man scavenge.
Yeah.
And Kaads told me about that. That is a tactic I've applied as well. It's a good one.
Yeah, you get stone skin on yourself, and you mend the missing points of the stone skin, and you steal life essence and get the mend back.
Yoink.
Mm-hmm. I think there are like several. I mean, the bard tries to do it with just swift mends, and then just recharging themselves, either charging back the mend or getting it in power or something like that. Like any class that's on the front line wants scavenge, like we want it, but we don't have it, so we have to try to make this bootleg janky crap and be like, this is my scavenge. It takes 5 points and it works 20% of the time.
20% of the time, 100% of the time.
Right. It's scavenge is such a good ability. It's ridiculous. You guys can talk, by the way, audience, if you have a question or a comment or anything like that. We've reached the open conversation section. You just have to unmute yourselves because you're no longer server muted.
I've seen Balder's little light up.
I think he's typing because he's got loud keys.
I'm playing League.
Dear God.
You're not even listening.
That's my man-at-arms, everybody. I'm his man-at-arms. I'm his man-at-arms. We're a mess.
You're man-at-arms to each other.
I make Michael's tree now. I can mess it up.
Oh my gosh. So, funny story in regards to man-at-arms. I am man-at-arms to Fog because he is a lord, but he is not a knight. And I think that I'm closer to knighthood than he is. So if I get knighted before he does, then my first thing is I'm going to squire him.
You know the story about Megiddo and oh God, what is his squire's name that got knighted before him? Guy.
That guy.
No, his name is Guy.
That's always so confusing. Why is that a name?
Hilariously, if it's French and it's supposed to be pronounced Guy, but
yeah,
everyone pronounces it Guy.
Megiddo squired him, and then Guy got knighted first, and then was knighted for like 2 years before Megiddo got knighted. So there was a fun little weird thing on the tree where it was Megiddo squire belted to. It's fun, weird stuff. Do we have any other questions regarding Healer instead of talking about weird belt politics and how I mess up Michael's tree when I decide to throw Balder on the list?
Did you put him on Jamie's the
No.
thing that you made for Jamie?
No, if I included so there are 70 with the new edition there are 74 people on Michael's tree that are just knights and squires. If we include man-at-arms and pages, it's something like 140.
Damn.
It's stupid. There's so many of us.
So stupid.
What was that, Weiss?
How close are we to dropping the squares? Because there's too many.
No, our first answer is to make it 2 posters instead of 1. We'd first drop the names on the squires, so you still get your heraldry, but no name, no fighting company, no kingdom heraldry attached. You just get your heraldry attached to your knight. But we'll see. Back on topic to Healer. Do we have any other questions on Healer? Otherwise, I'm gonna end the recording and we'll we can shoot the shit for a while. Almet said, I enjoy experience Banish on a priest list if I'm going super backline. My park has a lot of assassins.
Oh, yes.
That's probably a good idea.
Oh,
You do
I
want-
love it.
Yeah.
Adapting your list to things like that is a good idea.
Especially when you have the Astral Intervention and Banish combo, since Astral Intervention, you were gonna go there. Since Astral Intervention is already chargeable, then when you experience Banish, then it's just like this infinite loop of mean.
Exactly. I love it.
Yeah. Remember, this is something I point out to everybody now because I found a really good way to explain it. On the Whack podcast, they discovered that a Toyota Camry is 19.5 feet long. That is only 6 inches off from how far away you can be for 90% of our spells. Go look at a Toyota Camry and memorize that size because 20 feet is a lot smaller than you think. Like,
In my experience, it's always a lot longer than I think. I usually cast 20 feet spells like within 10 or 15 feet.
Then you need glasses. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, it's just I underestimate how much 20 feet is.
the other aspect of that is always remember you can start casting before they're in 20 feet. If someone is charging you,
Yes.
cast it when they're at 30 feet. Because if you start casting at 20, 90% of the time they're going to run you through because 20 feet is like 5 steps.
That's
Or
also
you can-
a good point. Like if you're doing the resurrect bit where you're calling their dead body over to you, right? You don't have to like wait to start casting resurrect until you can touch them. You can start as long as you end it. You know what I mean?
That thing, casting when someone's out of range and running to you is invaluable for greater releasing fight after death barbarians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 20 feet is very, very small distance, and very few of our spells can be pulled off within sprinting distance of 20 feet because 20 feet is no time to cross if someone's running, especially if they are running already. To cross 20 feet is 2 to 3 steps, potentially 4 or 5 if they're short. Like, it's not much. We've got a question from Brother Augustine. A more general question. What advice do you have for a healer main who's played for about a decade with no awards? Travel.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, travel.
Wear something that gets you noticed, because more often than not, if you are flashy, you will get just as noticed as someone who is not flashy and is maybe a better healer than you. Not saying that like somebody specifically is. I don't know you, but
I don't know you.
visually being noticed can sometimes help you get Paragon Hood. It should.
Yeah. Presentation is a huge part of Paragon Hood. I wouldn't say it's in front of actual class battle game skill or the teaching aspect, but I would say it's a third, and not even a distant third. And that doesn't. And I've heard people say, a Paragon is someone should look like, you can guess what their class is without looking at their stash. And I disagree with that because, that's imparting what you think a healer is on somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I do not consent.
Yeah. But a big part of being Paragon is looking like your persona and putting effort into your persona and,
Hey,
having
man,
that
as long as you're not
presentation.
wearing rags, like, I don't know, wear some garb. Fuck.
Yeah, you can wear rags if your persona is a peasant, but they better be
Oh, yes.
pretty accurately. They should be not out of laziness, but because of
Preferably burlap.
Yes.
That is not
or even
comfortable.
just a potato sack.
My
with
goodness.
holes.
Don't wear just burlap on your skin, by the way. You will end up with a very bad day.
I would recommend play the class until they hate you playing the class.
Yeah,
Or
only play
until-
that class.
Yeah, or like I guess with healer it could go like where they absolutely love you all the time for being on their team. But that was sort of a mental approach I took to it. Especially when playing Wizard, I said to myself and to others, I'm going to play this until they hate me or until they give me Paragon.
It's a good goal.
The great times are when you've played healer for so long and then you're like, man, I should focus on like a martial class, and then you're like wearing a barbarian sash and they look at you and they're like, heal me, fucker, and you're like, do I look like a healer right now?
Yes, so many people ask me for heal when I switched to Wizard.
It's
no.
like, hey, pay attention. Pay attention.
Switched up. The other thing I would say is ask people why you're not getting awards. There's this weird, in my opinion, it's weird and I don't
Or
like
just
it.
ask for it.
Yeah, like if people are not allowed to ask for critiques or why they didn't get something, I think that's a fault on our system. So if you think you should get Paragon, ask other Paragons why you're not. If their answer is, well, I don't know you on the field, then you have to step up your game. You have to do a little more research, dig a little deeper, try to make sure that people are noticing you and that you are a threat on the field in some fashion.
With that one, just be prepared to get your feelings hurt.
Yeah.
If you haven't already been noticed. Like, it's a sad truth, but it's okay because you're there to learn.
It's also, they're not saying you as a person are bad. They're saying you have growth. You have space to learn. I'm an art student, and that was one of the first things they have to teach you, and they run you through the ringer for it, is like, when we say your art is bad, we're not saying you as a person are objectively a bad person. We're saying your art needs work. Our game is somewhat an art. Your art of war or art of the healer can get better. We're not saying you're bad if someone says we don't know who you are. They're just saying that you can grow. And it might be that they're not paying attention. It could also be that your effect on the field is not something that they're able to trace. Ask multiple people, ask a lot of people, and ask for critique. Critique is something that a lot of people, I think, take the wrong direction. Whenever I try to give critique, I'm trying to tell you, like, these are things that I noticed that you could do better on. I'm not saying you're wrong in what you're doing. I'm just saying these are things I noticed that you could make a bigger difference with, or something like that.
Oh, and make sure to go to Kingdom events.
If you don't show up to Kingdom events, you're never getting Paragon.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely agreed. Like, I've seen a lot of people, and it's hard to tell them this without really hurting their feelings. Like, this person should get Paragon. They do really, really well at my park, and they kick a lot of ass at my park. Have they played in any Kingdom games? Yes, and they're completely unnoticeable and just kind of a face in the crowd there. But one thing to be clear is that Paragon is a Kingdom level award. In order to get Paragon, you have to be a dominant force at the Kingdom level.
Mm-hmm. We had it on our first episode. Hot takes. Park Paragons shouldn't exist. You can be the best at your park, but because Paragon is a Kingdom award, You got to be stunting on kingdom levels. Now, if you're playing healer and playing support healer, it is going to be a little harder for the opposing team to realize that you've made a big difference unless they're very tactical and strategical and strategy based. They may not realize the difference you made, but your team should. Asmaria got her Paragon for a lot of gummy and resbot work. The other team very rarely knew what she was doing, but every time I was on her team, I could see the active change on the field of our players are live, they're moving, and they are ready to go immediately. We're not waiting on respawns. We're not losing life totals. They're they're ready to go. They're gone. They're doing things already. So make sure that the people that are seeing that change are recommending you to other people.
When you are looking for the recognition too, a good way to approach the situation, when you're going to ask for an award, it's not so much asking for the award. So if you're going to the monarch, a good way to phrase it would be, hey, I would like to get this award. Can you tell me what things I could do to help achieve that? So you're just stating it as, like, this is my goal. How can I help get there? Rather than saying, why don't I have this yet?
Yeah.
And when it comes to asking other casters or your peers in the community, just asking them for their advice rather than saying, why am I not a Paragon? Say, what things do you think I could improve on in my tactics or my casting, or what things would you like me to do on the team?
Another thing that really helps is there's this wonderful thing that's written into the rule book that talks about apprentices for Paragonhood. If you find someone who you get along with who is a Paragon, and you say, that person really impresses me, I feel I could learn from them, then become their apprentice. This does a couple of things. One, it gives you someone to go to, someone who is dedicated a portion of their lives to looking at what you do and what you can do to improve. And as opposed to just like random other people who are, who may or may not be watching you. This person is dedicated themselves to doing it. Number two,
Haj and I are examples of that.
Number two, if you are truly ready for Paragonhood, you now have someone who's going to bat for you and say, I recommend this person for Paragonhood. I took them as an apprentice and they are ready.
Mm-hmm. I also think you don't have to find... It depends, but there's the stigma that if you're going for a class, you have to find a Paragon in that class. I take it the same way as knighthood. You don't have to go for the same belt your knight did. It's a mentorship program that is very individual to each person. If your connection to your Paragon is strong, it doesn't matter if they're Paragon Scout and you want to be Paragon Monk. You will still learn things and you will work together to sharpen your skills. So find someone that you work well with, and that's for Squire and Apprentice. Find someone you work well with, you get along with, and that you are going to learn from. It's all kind of, you have to self-internalize why you want to do it and how the best way to get you there is. That was a terrible sentence, but for example, for me, I do really bad with self-motivation, but external factors make me do things really, really well. When I asked Broton to be my Paragon, I told him I have 1 year and I will get my Paragon Bard. And that was my deadline. Like, I'm telling you that if 1 year, if I don't get it, you kick me out of your belt, out of your Paragon tree thing. And he's like, sure. And I did it. I traveled a lot, and I don't expect anyone to keep to that same standard because it was stupid. Balder and I literally drove to like 4 different states to try to play games. Like, it was literally Haj, Balder, Timit, Aggro, and myself. We went to every park once We went to 3 different kingdoms. We went to like 5 huge battle game events. Like we went and dedicated our lives for a year to go be good. If you have the opportunity, great. If you don't hold yourself to that standard. It's a ridiculously stupid standard. And I really enjoyed every moment of it, but like, holy shit, that was not a smart idea.
Like, nice to have a story though.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, I enjoyed every moment of it. There's, I did the math at one point. Hodge, Balder, and I had something like a total of like 140 hours or something like that in the car over 1 year. Just talking about Amp-Card.
To put it into perspective, I went from level 1 to level 6 in Bard in 3 months. That's how much we traveled and played.
Everywhere.
Now you can just sign it online.
But find what motivates you in the game and let that push you forward. Hopper, you have a shout out. Your healer sash is dope.
Oh, you like it? This is Yaya Han fabric. It's fun to work with, but it's stretchy, so beware.
Does that still have the cross on the bottom?
No, actually, I gave that one away. This is the new one. The one with the cross on the bottom was like the one that I had before Paragon. I don't have it anymore. But that was also the same fabric, so the same beware. The stretchy fabric is annoying, but worth it.
Do we have any other questions, comments, concerns, personal attacks on myself?
You need to shame yourself more.
Fuck
you, Shorzy.
No, I love you, John.
Oh God. My train of thought exploded. Dear God. All right. If that is all of our questions, all of our stuff, this has been 3 hours and 35 minutes. I think this is our longest one now. Holy crap.
Didn't the other one have like 5 or 6 people?
The warrior one went fairly quickly, and we did have like 5 people. The other one that was really long was Druid, and that was mainly because Denny, Teflon, and I decided to talk battle game mechanics for an hour, regardless of what the topic was.
Fantastic.
I'll try to get this up on YouTube and Spotify sometime this week. Normally it's about Wednesday. I'm trying to get more consistent on that, so push me to do that. If you guys have any questions, you can always message me on Facebook under John Wilhelm, or you can find me under Merrick the 15th. That also works. Thank you all for joining us on this ridiculously long podcast, and recorded Merrick will roll us out. This has been another episode of The Paragon Path. If you liked what you heard or saw, please drop us a like and follow on YouTube or Spotify or Google Music or anywhere else that you can find us. We have a Facebook page on The Path that lets you know when we're recording, what you can join into, and what to expect next. We record these episodes live every other weekend on the Kingdom of Polaris Discord. Link is in the comments. If you'd like to learn more, please subscribe, comment, or just drop us a line. As always, happy to see you on the field. See you next time.